Sarah's hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold the phone. "David, please. I'm 5 months pregnant. You can't just leave me a text message and disappear." His voice was cold, distant, like a stranger's. "I told you, Sarah. I found someone else. The timing is wrong. There's nothing left to discuss." "Nothing left to discuss. I'm carrying your child." "I need you to stop calling me. My lawyer will be in touch about arrangements." The line went dead. Sarah stood in the empty condo, the condo that would be taken from her in 30 days, and felt her entire world collapse into silence. She was jobless, homeless, abandoned, and completely alone, but she didn't know yet that a phone call was coming. A phone call about a dead grandmother, a strange house in the Vermont wilderness, and secrets that would change everything she thought she knew about survival family and the blood running through her veins. Subscribe to our channel and follow Sarah's incredible journey to the very end. Comment below which city you're watching from so we can see how far this story travels around the world. Sarah Mitchell was not the kind of woman who cried in public. She had built her entire identity around control, around discipline, around the belief that if you worked hard enough, kept your head down, and followed the rules, life would reward you with stability. She was 31 years old when she learned how dangerous that belief could be. The morning everything began to fall apart, she woke at 5:30, same as always. Kissed David's forehead while he slept. Put on the gray suit she saved for important meetings. Drank her coffee standing up because sitting felt like wasting time. She was a senior analyst at Morrison & Associates, one of Boston's most respected financial consulting firms. 8 years of early mornings. 8 years of working weekends while her friends traveled and dated and lived. 8 years of sacrifice that had earned her a corner, office, a 6-figure salary, and a condo in Back Bay she had purchased entirely on her own. That condo was her proof. Proof that discipline worked. Proof that she didn't need anyone. She remembered signing those mortgage papers at 28 years old, her hands trembling. The weight of those keys feeling like victory. Now walking into the office on this ordinary Tuesday morning, she had no idea those keys would be worthless within a month. "Sarah," her assistant caught her before she reached her desk. "Richard wants to see you immediately." Something in the girl's voice made Sarah's stomach tighten. "Did he say what about—" "No, but his door's been closed all morning. Legal was in there for 2 hours." Legal. Sarah walked toward Richard Brennan's corner office, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Richard had been her mentor for 3 years. He'd promoted her twice. Told her she was the future of the firm. She trusted him completely. "Close the door," Richard said when she entered. He didn't ask her to sit down. "We have a problem." He slid a document across the desk. "The Morrison merger, Section 4.7, there's a compliance issue that's triggered a regulatory review." Sarah picked up the document. Her own signature stared back at her from the bottom of the page. "I don't understand. I reviewed this with you. You said the language was standard." "I don't recall that conversation." The words hit her like a physical blow. "Richard, you stood right there." She pointed at the spot by the window. "It was 11 o'clock at night. I'd been working for 16 hours. You told me you'd already reviewed it. You told me to sign." Richard's expression didn't change. "What I recall is assigning you to handle the final review. The signature on that document is yours. The responsibility is yours." "You're lying." "Careful, Sarah." "You're lying and you know it. You set me up." Richard leaned back in his chair. "Here's what's going to happen. Legal will present you with a separation agreement. You'll sign it. In exchange, we won't pursue formal proceedings that would end your career permanently." Sarah couldn't breathe. "I have emails, records, documentation. You have nothing." Richard's voice hardened. "I made sure of that months ago. Every email that could help you has been deleted from the server. Every meeting was off the record. It's your word against mine, and I've been with this firm for 23 years. He paused. "You've been here 8. Sarah gripped the edge of the desk to keep herself upright. Why would you do this to me?" "Because someone had to take the fall, and you were convenient." He checked his watch. "Legal is waiting for you in conference room B. I suggest you don't make this harder than it needs to be." Sarah walked out of his office on legs that didn't feel like her own. She made it to the bathroom before she collapsed. Pressed her forehead against the cold tile. Placed her hand on her belly, where her daughter was growing oblivious to the disaster unfolding around her. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "God, I'm so sorry." She stayed in that bathroom for 20 minutes. When she finally emerged, her face was composed. Her hands were steady, but something inside her had cracked open, and she didn't know if it would ever close again. The separation agreement was 12 pages long. Sarah sat in conference room B across from two lawyers she'd never seen before. They explained the terms in voices that were professionally sympathetic and personally indifferent. If you sign the firm agrees not to pursue regulatory action against you personally, you'll receive 4 weeks of severance. Your health insurance will continue for 60 days. 4 weeks. Sarah stared at them. I've given this company 8 years. The alternative is formal proceedings. Given the evidence, those proceedings would not go well for you. The evidence is fabricated. The lawyers exchanged glances. Ms. Mitchell, we understand this is difficult, but the signature on that document is undeniably yours. Fighting this will be expensive, exhausting, and ultimately futile. Sarah thought about the baby inside her, about the mortgage payments coming due, about the medical bills that would start arriving in 4 months. She thought about David, who would stand beside her, who would help her fight. She picked up the pen. If I sign this, what happens to Richard Brennan? That's not relevant to these proceedings. He orchestrated this entire thing. He deliberately bounty. Ms. Mitchell, sign the document or don't. Those are your options. Sarah's hand trembled as she signed her name. 8 years. Gone in 11 days. She called David from the parking garage. It's over, she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. They fired me. Richard set me up, and I can't prove it, and I signed something I shouldn't have signed, and it's over. Silence on the other end. David, I'm here. I'm just processing. I know it's a lot, but we'll figure it out together, right? We'll get through this. More silence. David, say something. I need time to think. Time to think about everything. This changes things, Sarah. You have to understand that. Changes what things I'm still me. We're still us. I'm still pregnant with our daughter. I'll see you at home. We'll talk. But they didn't talk. David came home late that night, slept on the far edge of the bed, left early the next morning without saying goodbye. This pattern continued for 3 days, 4 days, a week. Sarah watched him pull away like watching a car accident in slow motion. She saw it happening. She couldn't stop it. On day 10, she confronted him. We need to talk, really talk. You've barely looked at me in a week. David was packing a gym bag. He didn't stop. I've been busy. Too busy to speak to the mother of your child. Sarah? Are you having an affair? The question came out before she could stop it. David's hands froze. What? You heard me. You come home late. You won't touch me. You won't look at me. Are you sleeping with someone else? David zipped the bag shut. When he turned to face her, his expression was empty, closed. I don't think this is working. Sarah felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. What's not working? Us, this, any of it. David, I'm 5 months pregnant. I know. You proposed to me. You said you wanted this. You said. I said a lot of things. Things have changed. Things have changed because I lost my job, because someone else's crime destroyed my career, because everything's falling apart. David's voice rose for the first time. You have no income. We're going to lose this condo. You're about to have a baby, and we have nothing. We have each other. David laughed. It was the cruelest sound Sarah had ever heard. That's not enough. That was never going to be enough. He picked up his bag and walked toward the door. Where are you going? Out. David? The door slammed shut. 4 days later, Sarah came home to find half the closet empty. No note, no explanation, just absence where his things used to be. She called him 17 times. He didn't answer. Finally, a text message. I can't do this. I'm sorry. The timing is wrong. I found someone else. Please don't contact me. Sarah read it 3 times, then a 4th time, then a 5th. Found someone else. She had given him everything. Her trust, her future, her body. And he had ended it with a text message. She sat down on the floor of the half-empty closet and wrapped her arms around her belly and screamed until her throat was raw. The baby kicked hard as if fighting back against the grief threatening to drown them both. I know, Sarah gasped. I know. I'm still here. I won't give up. I promise I won't give up. But she didn't know how to keep that promise. She had no idea where to begin. Without David's income, the mortgage became impossible. Sarah did the math over and over, hoping the numbers would somehow change. They didn't. She called the bank on a Tuesday morning, trying to keep her voice professional. I'm calling about my mortgage account. I've had a change in circumstances, and I need to discuss options. What kind of change, ma'am? I lost my job, my partner left, I'm pregnant, and I'll transfer you to our hardship department. Please hold. 20 minutes of hold music, then another voice. Ms. Mitchell, I'm reviewing your account. You're currently 2 months behind on payments. I know, that's why I'm calling. I need a modification, a payment plan, something. Do you have documented income? Not currently, but I'm actively looking for work. Without documented income, we can't approve any modifications. You have 30 days to bring the account current, or we'll begin foreclosure proceedings. 30 days, I was told 60. That was before you missed the second payment. The timeline has accelerated. Sarah gripped the phone so hard her knuckles turned white. I'm 5 months pregnant. I have nowhere else to go. I understand this is difficult, ma'am, but policy is policy. Policy is policy, honey? Sarah repeated. That's what you're telling me. Your policy is to put a pregnant woman on the street. Ma'am? No, I've been a customer of this bank for 12 years. I've never missed a payment before this. I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking for time. I'm sorry, ma'am. There's nothing I can do. Sarah hung up the phone and stared at the wall for a long time. Policy is policy. Those 3 words would echo in her head for months. She sold everything she could, the furniture she'd spent years collecting, the artwork from her walls, the kitchen appliances David had left behind. Apparently his new woman had better ones. Each item that left the condo took something with it. Not just money, dignity, hope. Proof that she had once been someone who mattered. She posted her engagement ring online at 3 a.m, her eyes blurring with tears she refused to let fall. It sold within hours. $2,000, enough for 1 month's rent somewhere cheap. She was counting coins from a jar when her sister called. Sarah, I just heard. Emily's voice was thick with concern. Why didn't you tell me? Tell you what? Everything. David leaving. The job. All of it. How did you find out? I ran into Rebecca from your office. She told me you were gone. Then I called David and his number was disconnected. Sarah, what the hell is happening? Sarah sat down heavily, her hand on her belly. Everything's falling apart, Em. Everything I built. It's just gone. Come stay with me, please. You can't do this alone. I'm not alone. I have her. She pressed her palm against the baby's movement. I have to figure this out for her. You can figure it out from my couch. Please, Sarah, let me help you. Sarah closed her eyes. She had spent her entire adult life refusing help, proving she didn't need anyone. Look where that had gotten her. Okay, she whispered. Okay. On the last day, Sarah stood in the doorway of the empty condo for a long time. The walls were bare. The floors were scuffed and scratched. The windows faced another brick wall just as they always had. She had once imagined a future unfolding in this space. First steps, first words. A child growing up in rooms filled with light and love. That future belonged to someone else now. The building manager appeared in the hallway. Ms. Mitchell, I need the keys. Sarah looked at him. This stranger who would hand her home to strangers. I bought this place myself, she said quietly. I was 28 years old. I didn't have help from anyone. He shifted uncomfortably. I'm sorry for your situation. No, you're not. You don't know me. You don't care what happens to me. She pressed the keys into his hand. But I want you to remember my face. Because 10 years from now, when I'm standing somewhere better than this, I want you to remember the pregnant woman you evicted. I want you to know I survived. She walked away before he could respond. She didn't look back. Emily's apartment in Providence was small but warm. The couch was comfortable. The refrigerator was always full. Emily made dinner every night and pretended not to notice when Sarah cried in the shower. 3 weeks passed, then 4. Sarah applied for jobs constantly. Positions she was overqualified for. Positions she was underqualified for. Positions that didn't exist anymore by the time her application was reviewed. She checked her email obsessively, waiting for responses that rarely came. You need to eat more, Emily said one evening, watching Sarah push food around her plate. I'm not hungry. The baby needs you to be hungry. Sarah set down her fork. The baby needs me to find a job, to find somewhere to live, to figure out how to survive. You will. You just need time. Time is the one thing I don't have. Sarah gestured at her belly. 4 months. I have 4 months before she arrives, and I have nothing. Nothing. Emily reached across the table and took her sister's hand. You have me. You have family. That's not nothing. Sarah wanted to believe her. She really did. The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Sarah was lying on the couch, one hand on her belly, staring at the ceiling, trying to calculate how long she could survive on her remaining savings. The number was unfamiliar. Vermont area code. She almost didn't answer. Ms. Mitchell, Sarah Mitchell. Speaking. My name is Howard Crane. I'm an attorney in Burlington, Vermont. I'm calling regarding the estate of Eleanor Mitchell. Sarah sat up slowly. My grandmother. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry to inform you that Eleanor passed away 3 months ago. 3 months. Her grandmother had been dead for 3 months. And Sarah hadn't known, hadn't felt anything, hadn't even been told. No one told me. I've been trying to reach you. The contact information in Eleanor's records was outdated. The attorney paused. Miss Mitchell, you're the sole beneficiary of her estate. Sarah's heart began to pound. Estate? What estate? The property in Vermont, the house and surrounding land, it's all yours now. The house. Sarah remembered it vaguely. Summers when she was very young before her parents divorced. A log cabin deep in the wilderness. A woman who spoke rarely and watched everything. And something strange about the house itself. Something above it. A structure of some kind. Is there money? Sarah heard herself ask. Any savings? A small checking account. A few $1,000s. But the primary asset is the property itself. What's it worth? That's difficult to say. The location is quite remote, but the land has value. If you chose to sell, you might see $50,000-$60,000, perhaps more to the right buyer. $60,000. Not enough to restore everything she'd lost, but enough. Enough to find an apartment, enough to survive until the baby came, enough to start over. I need to see it, Sarah said. To sign papers? That would be advisable. There are documents requiring your signature, and you'll want to assess the property before making any decisions. I'll be there next week. She hung up and sat very still. Emily found her there an hour later, staring at the wall, her hand moving slowly across her belly. Sarah, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. My grandmother died 3 months ago. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. She left me her house in Vermont. Emily sat down beside her. A house? It might be worth $60,000, maybe more. Sarah, that's incredible. That could change everything. I know. Are you going to sell it? Sarah thought about the condo she'd lost, the career that had been stolen, the man who'd abandoned her, the baby who would be born in 4 months into a world that had given her mother nothing but broken promises. Yes, she said, I'm going to sell it. But even as she spoke, the words something stirred in her chest, something that felt almost like warning. She ignored it. The drive to Vermont took 5 hours. Sarah left before dawn, her small car packed with everything she might need for a few days. The baby was active that morning, kicking and shifting restlessly. I know, Sarah murmured, one hand on the wheel, one hand on her belly. I feel it too. Something's different. The highway narrowed as she crossed into Vermont. The towns grew smaller. The distances between them stretched longer. At the last gas station for 40 miles, she stopped to fill up. The attendant was an older man with weathered hands and kind eyes. He looked at the address she showed him, and his expression changed. That's deep in there, he said. Mountain road, not much out that way. My grandmother lived there. Eleanor. His eyes widened. You're Eleanor's kin. Her granddaughter. The man stared at her for a long moment. Something like reverence crossed his face. She was something special, your grandmother. Something real special. Everyone keeps telling me that. What did she do? What did she do? The man laughed softly. Lady, there's folks in 3 counties who'd be dead if not for Eleanor Mitchell. You don't know the story. No, we weren't close. The man shook his head slowly. That's a shame. A real shame. You should ask around when you get up there. Ask about the winter of '03. What happened in '03? That's not my story to tell, but I'll say this. He pointed at her belly. That child you're carrying has something to be proud of. Real proud. Sarah drove away with his words echoing in her head. What had her grandmother done? The road deteriorated as she climbed. Asphalt gave way to gravel. Gravel gave way to dirt. Twice she almost turned back, but something kept her going. Something she couldn't name. And then finally she saw it. The house stood alone in a clearing. A log structure, dark with age, built low and solid. But the canopy, Sarah stopped the car and stared. It was enormous. A massive wooden structure rising above the house supported by thick posts that looked older than anything she'd ever seen. It extended far beyond the walls, creating a sheltered space larger than the house itself. Why would anyone build something like that? She got out slowly, her legs stiff, her back aching. The air was cold, sharp, clean in a way city air never was. The house seemed to watch her approach, the narrow windows like eyes, the heavy door like a mouth that might speak at any moment. "Hello," she called, feeling foolish. The word echoed back from the canopy. The key turned smoothly in the lock, as if it had been waiting. Inside, the smell hit her first. Wood smoke, dried herbs, preserved food. The smell of a life lived on purpose. Sarah moved through the room, slowly touching nothing at first. The furniture was simple. Built to last, not to impress. Everything was clean and ordered. Her grandmother had died 3 months ago. Who had been maintaining this place? In the kitchen, she found shelves lined with preserved foods. Jars labeled in handwriting she recognized from childhood birthday cards. Enough food to last months. In a closet, she found blankets, warm coats, medical supplies, and something that made her freeze. Prenatal vitamins. 3 bottles. Expiration date 2 years away. Her grandmother had been 78 years old. She had lived alone. Why would she stock prenatal vitamins? Sarah sat down heavily at the kitchen table, her mind racing. This house wasn't just a home. It was a fortress, a supply depot, a place built for survival. But survival against what the realtor arrived the next morning. His name was Tom Harden, mid-60s, weathered face, the kind of handshake that told you he'd spent his life working with his hands. "So you're Eleanor's girl, he said, looking at her belly. "She talked about you sometimes." "She did?" "Said you lived in the city, said you were strong, said you reminded her of herself when she was young." Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. She blinked them back. "We weren't close." "I know," she regretted that. Tom looked up at the canopy, squinting against the morning light. "You know why she built this thing?" "No, I was going to ask you." "I don't know the full reason, but I know what it did." He turned to face her. "You heard about the winter of '03. The man at the gas station mentioned it. What happened?" Tom was quiet for a long moment. "It was the worst winter in 50 years. Came on fast, no warning. Power went out across 3 counties and didn't come back for 6 weeks. Roads were impassable. Emergency services couldn't get through." He pointed at the house. "People died, Sarah. Good people. Families frozen in their homes. Children who didn't make it through the night." Sarah felt her daughter kick. She pressed her hand against the movement. "But not here. Not here." Tom's voice was soft. Word spread through the mountains that there was a place that was holding. A place with heat, food, shelter. People started coming. First from nearby, then from miles away. Families with children. Elderly folks who couldn't survive alone. How many? 47. At the peak, 47 people lived in and around this house for almost 2 months. Sarah stared at him. "That's impossible. This house can't hold." "That's what the canopy was for." Tom pointed up. "When the house was full, your grandmother set up stations under that structure. Fire pits, sleeping areas, cooking stations. She'd been preparing for years. Had everything ready." "Preparing for what?" "For exactly what happened. For the moment when the systems everyone trusted would fail and people would need somewhere to go." Sarah looked at the house with new eyes. Not a cabin, not a retreat, a refuge. "She organized everything," Tom continued. "Food rationing, sleeping schedules, medical care. She delivered 2 babies during those weeks. One on the coldest night of the winter. She delivered babies. Your grandmother knew more about survival than anyone I ever met, and she never asked for thanks, never wanted recognition. When the state tried to give her an award, she refused. Why? She said she wasn't a hero, said she was just someone who paid attention to what the world required, said anyone could do what she did if they prepared instead of hoping someone else would save them." Sarah was silent for a long moment. She thought about Boston, about Richard Brennan and his manufactured evidence, about David and his text message, about a system that had taken everything from her in 11 days. She thought about her grandmother who had built something that could weather any storm. "How much is the property worth?" she heard herself ask. Tom sighed. "To a developer, maybe 40,000. To someone who understands what this place is," he shrugged. "You can't put a price on that." Sarah nodded slowly. "I need to think," she said. "Take your time. That's one thing we've got plenty of out here." Tom drove away. Sarah stood alone in the clearing, looking up at the canopy that had sheltered 47 lives. The wind picked up. Clouds gathered at the edge of the scale, and the question that had been forming in her mind finally took shape. What if the reason she'd lost everything in Boston wasn't punishment? What if it was redirection? What if she was exactly where she was supposed to be? Sarah placed her hand on her belly where her daughter was kicking. "What do you think?" she whispered. "Should we stay?" The baby kicked harder, almost like an answer. Sarah looked at the house, at the canopy, at the forest stretching endlessly in every direction. She had come here to sell, to extract value, to convert this strange property into money that might help her survive a little longer in a world that had rejected her. But standing here now, feeling the weight of history she was only beginning to understand, she wasn't sure anymore. She wasn't sure about anything. Except one thing. She wasn't leaving today. The first night, Sarah barely slept. She lay in her grandmother's bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to sounds she couldn't identify. The house creaked and groaned around her. Wind moved through trees she couldn't see. Somewhere in the distance, an animal called out a sound so foreign it might as well have come from another planet. Her daughter kicked restlessly as if sensing her mother's unease. "I know," Sarah whispered in the darkness. "I don't know what we're doing here either." She had planned to stay one night, 2 at most, sign the papers, meet with Tom about listing the property, leave. But something held her here, something she couldn't name. At 3 in the morning, she finally gave up on sleep and walked through the house with a flashlight opening drawers and cabinets she hadn't explored. In a closet near the back bedroom, she found boxes, dozens of them, labeled in her grandmother's precise handwriting. Medical supplies, emergency. Clothing, winter, various sizes. Documents, important. Sarah pulled out the document box and sat cross-legged on the cold floor, her belly making the position awkward. Inside were folders, tax records, property deeds, insurance papers, and letters. Dozens of letters bundled with rubber bands addressed to people Sarah had never heard of. She opened one at random. "Dear Mrs. Patterson, I hope this letter finds you well. I wanted to check on James and make sure his recovery is progressing. The frostbite he suffered was severe, but children are resilient. Please let me know if there's anything you need. The house is always open. Eleanor." Sarah's hands trembled as she opened another. "Dear Tom, thank you for your help with the roof repairs. I know you refused payment, but I've left something for your family at the usual place. Take care of those grandchildren. They're lucky to have you. Eleanor." Letter after letter, dozens of them, all from her grandmother to people in the surrounding communities, all offering help, all checking on families, all signed simply Eleanor. Sarah had thought her grandmother was a recluse, a hermit who had retreated from the world. She had been wrong. Eleanor Mitchell hadn't retreated from anything. She had built a network, a community, a web of relationships that stretched across the mountains, and Sarah had known nothing about it. Day 2. Sarah called Emily from the one spot near the house where her phone got signal a small rise about 50 yards from the front door. "How is it?" Emily asked. "Strange, overwhelming. I found letters last night, dozens of them. Grandmother was... She wasn't what I thought she was." "What do you mean?" "I thought she was isolated, alone. But she had connections everywhere, people she helped, people who helped her. It's like she built her own society out here." Emily was quiet for a moment. "Are you still planning to sell?" Sarah looked back at the house, at the canopy rising above it. "I don't know anymore." "Sarah, you need to be practical. You're pregnant. You have no job. That money could... I know what the money could do, but there's something here, something I'm only starting to understand." "You've been there 2 days." I know how it sounds. It sounds like you're running away, like you're hiding from everything that happened in Boston." The words stung because they might be true. "Maybe I am," Sarah admitted. "But maybe that's not the worst thing right now. Maybe I need to hide for a while, figure out who I am when I'm not trying to prove something to everyone," Emily sighed. "Just be careful, please. You're not just making decisions for yourself anymore." Sarah placed her hand on her belly. "I know, believe me, I know." Day 3. The weather changed without warning. Sarah woke to a world transformed. Frost covered everything the ground the canopy supports the narrow windows of the house. The temperature had dropped 30 degrees overnight. She tried to start her car. It wouldn't turn over. No. She tried again. Nothing. Just a clicking sound that felt like mockery. Sarah sat in the driver's seat, her breath visible in the cold air, and felt panic rising in her chest. She was stranded, 5 months pregnant, alone, in the middle of nowhere, with a car that wouldn't start and no way to call for help. "Okay," she said out loud, forcing herself to breathe. "Okay, think. What would grandmother do?" The answer came immediately. She would go inside, build a fire, stay warm, wait. Sarah walked back to the house on legs that felt unsteady. The cold bit through her coat, through her sweater, through everything. By the time she reached the door, her fingers were numb. Inside, she knelt before the fireplace and tried to remember what she'd seen in movies. Kindling first, then larger pieces. Airflow was important somehow. Her first 3 attempts failed. The 4th produced smoke that filled the room and made her cough until tears streamed down her face. "Come on," she begged. "Please, please." The 5th attempt caught, a small flame that grew slowly, hesitantly, as if deciding whether to trust her. Sarah fed it carefully, tiny pieces of wood, then larger ones. The warmth spread through the room like a blessing. She sat on the floor in front of the fire, her hand on her belly, and laughed. Actually laughed. "We did it," she told her daughter. "We made fire. Your mother made fire." The baby kicked in response. For the first time since losing everything in Boston, Sarah felt something other than despair. She felt capable. Day 4. The snow began at noon. Sarah watched it through the narrow windows, at first not understanding what she was seeing. Light flurries, nothing serious. By evening, 4 inches had accumulated. By midnight, the path to the road had disappeared entirely. Sarah stood at the window, watching the white world erase everything familiar, and realized with growing horror that she might not be leaving anytime soon. She checked her phone. No signal, not even a single bar. "Okay?" she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Okay, we're okay. We have food, we have fire, we have shelter." She inventoried the supplies more carefully this time. The preserved foods in the kitchen, the dried goods in the pantry, the root vegetables in the cellar she'd discovered behind a hidden door. Enough for weeks, maybe months. Her grandmother had been prepared for exactly this scenario. The question was, could Sarah survive it day 5? She tried to leave. The attempt was stupid. She knew it was stupid even as she was doing it. But the walls were closing in. The silence was oppressive, and she needed to prove to herself that she wasn't trapped. She made it half a mile before the snow became too deep to walk through. She stood there chest deep in white, her breath coming in ragged gasps, and felt something break inside her. "Help!" she screamed at the empty forest. "Someone help me!" No one answered. No one was coming. Sarah fought her way back to the house, her legs burning, her lungs aching, her belly heavy and awkward. By the time she reached the door, she was sobbing. She collapsed on the floor just inside and lay there for a long time, too exhausted to move. The baby kicked, hard, almost angry. "I know," Sarah gasped. "I'm sorry. That was stupid. I won't do it again." She dragged herself to the fire and fed it with trembling hands. She wasn't getting out of here, not until the weather decided to let her go. Day 6. Sarah found the journal. It was hidden in a compartment she'd missed a false bottom in a drawer near her grandmother's bed. A thick leather book filled with decades of handwriting. She opened it to a random page. November 15th, 1998. First real snow of the season. Tested the canopy supports holding well. Need to reinforce the southeast corner before January. Made a list of families who might need help this winter. The Hendersons have a new baby. The Carters' roof still isn't fixed. We'll check on them next week. Sarah turned to another page. March 3rd, 2003. The worst is over. 47 people sheltered here for 53 days. We lost no one. Not one soul, but the cost was high. I haven't slept more than 2 hours at a time in weeks. My hands shake when I try to hold things. Robert Harrison told me I saved his family. I told him he saved himself. I just provided the space. But I could see in his eyes that he didn't believe me. They're making me into something I'm not. I'm just a woman who paid attention. Anyone could do what I did. Sarah's eyes blurred with tears. She turned to the last entry, dated 3 months before her grandmother's death. September 22nd, and feeling weaker lately. The doctor in Burlington says it's my heart, says I should move somewhere with better access to hospitals. I told him I'd rather die here than live somewhere I don't belong. He didn't understand. How could he? This house isn't just shelter. It's purpose. It's legacy. I hope someone comes after me who understands that. I hope the house finds whoever needs it most. That's all I've ever wanted for this place, to keep doing what it was built to do, to hold, to shelter, to save. Sarah closed the journal and pressed it against her chest. Her grandmother had hoped someone would come who understood. Had she known, somehow, or impossibly had she known, it would be Sarah Day 8. The knock came at dusk. Sarah was tending the fire when she heard it soft but unmistakable. Someone at the door. Her heart hammered. She grabbed the fire poker and approached slowly. "Who's there?" "My name is Margaret Holloway." An elderly woman's voice, weathered but strong. "I saw your smoke, wanted to make sure the house was occupied again." Sarah opened the door a crack. The woman on the porch was ancient, at least 75, maybe older, wrapped in layers of clothing that had been repaired countless times. Eyes sharp and alert despite the lines carved deep into her face. "You walked here in this weather." 4 miles. Not so bad when you know the way." Margaret studied her. "You're pregnant." 5 months. "And you're alone." It wasn't a question. "Yes." Margaret nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something she'd suspected. "Eleanor's granddaughter. How did you know?" "She talked about you, said you were stubborn, said you had her eyes." Margaret smiled slightly. She was right on both counts. Sarah stepped back. "Please, come in, warm yourself." Margaret entered the house like someone returning home. She moved to the fire without hesitation, warming her hands, surveying the room with an appraising eye. "You've kept it well," she said. "The fire's burning right. The supplies are organized." "I've been learning." "Learning is good. Learning keeps you alive." Sarah made tea from supplies she'd found in the kitchen. They sat at the heavy wooden table, the fire crackling behind them. "You knew my grandmother well." Everyone in these mountains knew Eleanor. But yes, I knew her better than most. We survived '03 together. My husband died 3 days before the rescue teams finally got through. Eleanor held me while I screamed. Margaret's voice didn't waver. Then she handed me a list of tasks and told me grief was a luxury I couldn't afford until everyone was safe. I hated her for that. For about 10 years, I hated her. And then I understood. She wasn't being cruel. She was being kind in the only way that mattered. She was keeping me alive by keeping me useful. Margaret wrapped her hands around the mug of tea. "Your grandmother saved 47 lives that winter to shoot, but she'd tell you she just provided the space. She never took credit for anything." Sarah thought about the journal entry, about her grandmother's insistence that anyone could have done what she did. Why did she build this place, the canopy, the supplies? It's like she knew disaster was coming. She didn't know. She prepared. There's a difference. Margaret set down her tea. Eleanor grew up during the Depression. Her family lost everything twice, once to the economy, once to a fire that destroyed their farm. She learned young that systems fail, that the people who survive aren't the strongest or the smartest. They're the ones who prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. She built this place to survive disaster. She built this place to help others survive disaster. There's a difference there, too. Margaret's eyes held Sarah's. The house could have been smaller. The canopy wasn't necessary for her alone. Every decision she made was about capacity, about how many people this place could hold when holding mattered most. Sarah felt something shift inside her chest. "I was going to sell it." "I know." "The money would help me start over. I lost everything back in Boston. My job, my home, the father of my child." "I know that too. Eleanor told me you'd come. She said you'd arrive at the worst possible time, carrying more than you realized. She said the house would decide what happened next." Sarah stared at her. "She knew I was coming. That's impossible." Eleanor knew a lot of things that seemed impossible. She had a sense for people, for timing. Margaret stood slowly, her joints creaking. "I should go before the light fails completely." "You can't walk 4 miles in the dark. Stay tonight." "I've walked these mountains in the dark for 60 years, but thank you." Margaret moved toward the door, then paused. "There's something you should know. Something Eleanor never told you." Sarah's heart began to pound. "What?" "The prenatal vitamins you found, the extra supplies in the back closet, the baby clothes hidden in the cedar chest upstairs." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. "How do you know about—" "Eleanor bought them 2 years ago. She said someone was coming who would need them. Said she'd seen it in a dream." Margaret opened the door. "I thought she was losing her mind, but here you are. 5 months pregnant, exactly when she said you'd arrive." The cold air rushed in. "Wait!" But Margaret was already walking into the snow, her dark figure disappearing into the white. Sarah stood in the doorway, shivering, her mind racing. Her grandmother had known. 2 years ago, she had known Sarah would come here pregnant and desperate. How was that possible? What else had Eleanor Mitchell known? Day 10. Sarah tore the house apart, searching. She found the baby clothes exactly where Margaret said they would be, a cedar chest in the upstairs room she hadn't fully explored. Tiny onesies, soft blankets, newborn diapers, all brand new, still in packaging. She found medical supplies specifically for pregnancy and childbirth, books on home delivery, sterile equipment sealed in plastic. She found a letter addressed to her by name. Dear Sarah, if you're reading this, you found what I left for you. I know this will seem impossible to explain. I don't fully understand it myself. But for the past year, I've been having dreams about you. Vivid dreams. You're here in this house in winter. You're pregnant. You're alone. And you're exactly where you need to be. I don't know what happens in your life that brings you here. I only know that it does. And I know that when you arrive, you'll need more than shelter. You'll need permission. So here it is, you have permission to stay, to make this place your own, to continue what I started. But I also want you to know that you have permission to leave, to sell, to take the money and build a different life somewhere else. I won't haunt you either way. The choice is yours. Whatever you decide, remember this, you're stronger than you know. The blood that runs through your veins has survived worse than whatever brought you here. You come from a line of women who endured, who built, who held on when holding on seemed impossible. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you when you were growing up. I'm sorry I let the distance grow between us. I could give you reasons, but reasons don't heal wounds. What I can give you is this, a house that holds, a legacy that matters, and the knowledge that you were loved by someone who never found the words to say it. Whatever happens next, trust yourself. You're ready. With all my love, your grandmother Eleanor. Sarah sat on the floor of the upstairs room, surrounded by baby clothes and impossible evidence, and wept until she couldn't breathe. Her grandmother had seen her coming, had prepared for her, had loved her across years and silence and distance, and Sarah had almost sold it all for $60,000. Day 12. The storm arrived without warning. Sarah was checking the fire when the wind suddenly screamed. The house shuddered. Something crashed outside a branch, falling maybe a tree. She ran to the window and saw nothing but white. Complete whiteout. The canopy had disappeared. The forest had disappeared. Everything beyond 10 feet was gone. The temperature dropped so fast Sarah could feel it through the walls. No, she whispered. No, no, no. She fed the fire, frantically piling on more wood than she should have, not caring about conservation anymore. The cold was seeping in through cracks she hadn't noticed. Through the windows, through the floor. She layered on every piece of clothing she could find, wrapped herself in quilts, huddled as close to the fire as she dared. Still, she shivered. The baby was still. Too still. Hey, Sarah said, pressing her hand against her belly. Hey, you need to move. You need to let me know you're okay. Nothing. Please, please move. Still nothing. Panic rose in Sarah's throat. She stood up, paced, jumped in place, did everything she could think of to stimulate movement. Nothing. No, no, I can't lose you too. I can't. A kick, hard and sudden. Sarah gasped with relief. Tears streamed down her face. Thank God, thank God. The baby kicked again and again, active now, awake, protesting all the movement. I'm sorry. Sarah laughed through her tears. I'm sorry for waking you up, but I needed to know you were there. I needed... The wind screamed again. The fire flickered dangerously. Sarah looked around the house, her grandmother's house, her house now, and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Determination. Okay, she said out loud. Okay, we're going to survive this, both of us, together. She spent the next 3 hours reinforcing every weakness she could find, stuffing cloth into cracks around windows, moving furniture to block drafts, creating a smaller heated zone around the fireplace instead of trying to warm the whole house. By the time the storm's initial fury subsided, Sarah was exhausted but satisfied. She had done this, alone. Pregnant, terrified. She had done it anyway. Day 13. The storm continued, but weaker now. Sarah had fallen into a rhythm. Wake, feed fire, check supplies, rest. Wake, feed fire, check supplies, rest. She talked to her daughter constantly now. It helped fill the silence. Your great-grandmother built this place. She saved 47 people here. Can you imagine 47 people who might have died if she hadn't been ready? Kick. I know, it's a lot to live up to, but I'm not trying to be her. I'm just trying to figure out who I am. Kick. You want to know something? Before all this happened, before I lost my job and David left and everything fell apart, I thought I knew who I was. I was Sarah Mitchell, senior analyst, homeowner, woman who had it all figured out. Kick. But I didn't have anything figured out. I was just following rules someone else made, working in a system that could throw me away the second I became inconvenient. I built my whole identity on things that could be taken from me. The fire crackled. The wind moaned outside. But this can't be taken. This is real. This matters. People lived because this house existed. People might live again because it still exists. Sarah placed both hands on her belly. I think I understand now. Why I'm here. What I'm supposed to do. She looked around the room at the walls. Her grandmother built the fire. Her grandmother's hearth fed the supplies her grandmother's foresight provided. I'm not going to sell this place. The baby kicked hard as if in agreement. We're going to stay. We're going to learn everything. And we're going to make sure this house keeps doing what it was built to do. For the first time since arriving, Sarah felt something she barely recognized. Purpose. Day 15. Margaret returned. Sarah saw her coming through the window, a dark figure moving through the snow, with impossible grace. She had the door open before Margaret reached the porch. You came back. I said I would. You didn't say anything of the kind. Margaret smiled. Then I'm saying it now. I came to check on you, and to bring you something. She handed Sarah a worn cloth bag. Inside were jars of preserved food, dried meat, fresh bread wrapped in cloth. I can't accept this. I need to know Eleanor's granddaughter isn't starving while she figures out her life. Take it. Sarah took it. Her eyes were wet. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank your grandmother. She helped my family for 30 years. This is just me balancing the scales. They sat by the fire again, sharing tea, sharing warmth. I found her letter, Sarah said. The one she wrote to me. She knew I was coming. Eleanor knew many things. How is that possible? Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Your grandmother wasn't like other people, Sarah. She had a sense for things. She'd dream about storms 3 days before they arrived. She'd know when someone needed help before they knew it themselves. She called it paying attention, but it was more than that. Are you saying she was psychic? I'm saying she was connected. To this place. To the people around her. To something bigger than any of us understood. Margaret met Sarah's eyes. She told me once that the house spoke to her, that it showed her things. I thought she was being poetic, but after 40 years of knowing her, I'm not so sure anymore. Sarah thought about the dreams, about the letter, about the prenatal vitamins purchased 2 years before she needed them. She wrote that the choice is mine, to stay or to sell. That sounds like Eleanor. She never forced anyone to do anything. But she knew what I would choose. She prepared for me to stay. Margaret smiled. She hoped you would choose it. There's a difference. Eleanor always said hope wasn't the same as certainty. Hope is what you do when you don't know the outcome but decide to act anyway. Sarah considered this. I'm staying, she said. I've decided. I'm going to stay and learn everything I can and make sure this place survives. I know. You knew I would say that. I hoped. Margaret stood slowly. And that's enough for now. Day 18. Sarah's car still wouldn't start. She'd tried everything she could think of. The battery was dead, the engine was frozen, and there was no way to get a mechanic to a place that didn't appear on Jeep. She stood in the cold staring at the useless vehicle and made a decision. She didn't need it. If she was staying, the car didn't matter. The road didn't matter. The connection to the outside world didn't matter. What mattered was here. The house, the canopy, the legacy. She walked back inside and closed the door. The outside world would still exist when she was ready for it. But for now, she had work to do. Day 20. Sarah found the blueprints. They were rolled up in a tube in the attic, covered in decades of dust. Detailed plans for the house, the canopy, the outbuildings she hadn't fully explored. Her grandmother hadn't just built a house. She'd engineered a survival system. The canopy was designed to support the weight of heavy snow while creating a protected zone beneath it. Fire pits were placed at calculated intervals for maximum heat distribution. Storage areas were positioned to remain accessible even in the worst conditions. Every detail had been planned. Every possibility had been considered. Sarah spent hours studying the blueprints, marveling at the precision, the foresight, the love embedded in every line. This was her inheritance. Not money, not property, knowledge. Day 22. Sarah went into labor. No, that wasn't right. It was too early. 4 months too early. She felt the cramping first. Sharp, rhythmic, terrifying. Then the wetness between her legs. No, she gasped. No, it's too soon. Please, God, it's too soon. She crawled to the medical supplies, found the book on pregnancy complications, read through tears and panic. Preterm labor. Contractions before 37 weeks. Can sometimes be stopped. She needed to stay calm, stay horizontal, stay hydrated. She needed to get to a hospital, but there was no way to get to a hospital. No car, no phone signal, no help coming. Sarah lay on the floor, breathing through contractions, praying to a God she wasn't sure she believed in. Please, please don't take her from me too. I've lost everything else. Please don't take her. The contractions continued for 3 hours, then 4, then 5, and then gradually they slowed, they weakened, they stopped. Sarah lay there in the darkness, her hand on her belly, feeling her daughter kick still. There, still alive, still fighting. You're strong, she whispered. You're so strong. You're a survivor, just like your great-grandmother. The baby kicked again? Sarah laughed through her tears. They had survived. Both of them. Together. Day 23. Morning light filtered through the narrow windows. Sarah sat up slowly, carefully afraid any sudden movement might trigger the contractions again, but her body felt different now. Stable. Settled. She made her way to the fire, fed it fresh wood, sat in the warmth, and tried to process what had happened. She had almost lost her daughter. In a house with no electricity, no phone, no help, she had faced the worst possibility and survived it. That meant something. She didn't know exactly what yet, but it meant something. Sarah looked around the room at the walls that had sheltered 47 people, at the fire that had kept them alive, at the canopy, visible through the window, that had protected them from the worst nature could deliver. Her grandmother had built all of this alone, had maintained it alone, had used it to save lives again and again, and now Sarah was here, pregnant, alone, continuing the work that Eleanor had started. I understand now, she said out loud. I finally understand. This wasn't punishment. This wasn't exile. This was preparation. Everything that had happened, the job, David Boston, all of it had brought her here, to this place, at this time, for a reason she was only beginning to comprehend. Sarah placed her hand on her belly and felt her daughter move. We're going to be okay, she said. We're going to be more than okay. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she actually believed it. Day 24. Sarah woke to a sound she didn't recognize. Voices, outside the house. Multiple voices. She struggled to her feet, her body still weak from the preterm labor scare, and moved to the window. 3 figures stood in the clearing. 2 men and a woman. They weren't dressed for the weather, city clothes, thin coats, shoes that would be ruined by the snow. One of the men was pointing at the house, the woman was taking photographs. Sarah's heart began to pound. She grabbed the fire poker and moved to the door. Can I help you? The 3 strangers turned. The woman lowered her camera. One of the men, tall, expensive haircut, confident smile, stepped forward. You must be Sarah Mitchell. I'm Harrison Cole. This is my associate, James, and our photographer, Rebecca. I didn't ask for your names. I asked what you're doing on my property. Harrison's smile didn't waver. We're from Northland Development. We've been trying to reach you for weeks. When we couldn't get through by phone, we decided to come in person. Development. We're interested in purchasing this land. Very interested. He gestured at the surrounding forest. This entire area has significant potential. Ski resort, luxury cabins. The canopy structure alone is a unique architectural feature that could become a centerpiece attraction. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. The property isn't for sale. Everything has a price, Ms. Mitchell. We're prepared to offer significantly more than market value. $100,000. Cash. Immediate closing. $100,000. More than she'd dreamed of. More than enough to start over anywhere she wanted. But Sarah thought about her grandmother's letter. About the 47 people who had survived because this house existed. About the baby clothes in the cedar chest and the blueprints in the attic and the network of families across these mountains who remembered Eleanor Mitchell as the woman who saved their lives. No. Harrison blinked. I'm sorry. I said no. The property isn't for sale. Not for $100,000. Not for any price. Ms. Mitchell, I don't think you understand the opportunity. I understand perfectly. You want to tear down something that matters and build something that doesn't. You want to turn my grandmother's legacy into a ski resort. Sarah gripped the fire poker tighter. Get off my land. Harrison's smile finally faded. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. We'll be back with a better offer. Don't bother. Sarah watched them trudge back through the snow toward a black SUV she hadn't noticed before. The vehicle had chains on its tires. They'd come prepared to reach her. They'd known she was here. They'd known she was alone. And they would be back. Day 25. Margaret arrived at noon, her face flushed with anger. "I heard about the visitors." Sarah looked up from the fire she was tending. Word travels fast. "In these mountains, always." Margaret sat down heavily. "Harrison Cole has been sniffing around this property for years. Your grandmother turned him down a dozen times. He offered her $500,000 right before she died." $500,000. She laughed in his face, told him the house wasn't hers to sell, said it belonged to everyone who had ever needed it, and everyone who ever would. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. She really said that Eleanor meant every word she ever spoke. That was her gift and her curse. Margaret leaned forward. "But Sarah, you need to understand something. Cole isn't a man who takes no for an answer. He's connected, powerful. He's destroyed families who stood in his way. What can he do? I own this property legally." "Legally, yes, but there are other ways to force someone out. Building code violations, environmental assessments, tax audits. He has lawyers, he has politicians in his pocket, he has time." Sarah's hand moved to her belly. "I'm not leaving." "I know you're not. That's why I'm here." Margaret reached into her bag and pulled out a thick folder. "Eleanor asked me to give you this. She said to wait until you were ready. I think you're ready now." Sarah took the folder. Inside were documents, legal papers, court records, newspaper clippings dating back decades. "What is this? Your grandmother's insurance policy. The real reason Harrison Cole can never touch this land." Day 26. Sarah spent 2 days reading through the documents Margaret had brought. The story they told was staggering. In 1985, Eleanor Mitchell had done something extraordinary. She had donated her property to a conservation trust while retaining lifetime rights to live there. But the trust wasn't ordinary. It was structured specifically to protect the land from development in perpetuity, with provisions that allowed designated family members to continue using the property for charitable purposes. The winter of 2003 had transformed the arrangement. After Eleanor's actions during the crisis, the state of Vermont had added additional protections. The property was now designated as a historical emergency shelter site protected by multiple overlapping legal frameworks. Harrison Cole couldn't buy it. He couldn't develop it. He couldn't touch it. But that wasn't all. The final document in the folder made Sarah's hands shake. It was a trust amendment dated 1 year before Eleanor's death. The amendment named Sarah Mitchell as the sole trustee of the property. It gave her complete authority over its use. And it included a provision Sarah had to read 3 times before she understood it. A monthly stipend. Drawn from investments Eleanor had made over 40 years. Enough to live on, enough to maintain the property, enough to continue her grandmother's work. Sarah wasn't just inheriting a house. She was inheriting a mission. Day 28. The phone rang. Sarah stared at it in shock. She hadn't heard that sound in weeks. The old landline her grandmother had maintained, she'd assumed it was disconnected. "Hello." "Sarah, oh my God, Sarah, is that you?" Emily's voice, frantic, terrified. How did you—" "I've been trying to reach you for 3 weeks. Your cell phone is disconnected. No one knew where you were." "I was about to call the police." Sarah closed her eyes. She had forgotten. Forgotten that people outside this house might be worried about her. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The storm hit and I couldn't leave and— Are you okay? Is the baby okay?" "We're fine. We're both fine." "You have to come home. Sarah, please. You've been gone for almost a month. You're 7 months pregnant now. You can't stay in the middle of nowhere alone." "I'm not coming home, Em." Silence. "What do you mean, you're not coming home?" "I mean I'm staying. Here. This is where I belong." "Sarah, you're not thinking clearly. The isolation, the stress—" "I've never thought more clearly in my life." Sarah looked around the room that had become her sanctuary. "Grandmother left me everything, Em. Not just the property, a purpose, a legacy, a reason to keep going." "You have a reason to keep going. You're about to have a baby. And this is where I'm going to raise her." Emily was quiet for a long moment. "You're serious?" "Completely." "Sarah, you can't deliver a baby alone in the wilderness. You need a hospital, doctors. What if something goes wrong?" Sarah thought about the preterm labor scare, about the hours of terror, about how close she had come to losing everything. "I'm working on that. There are people here who can help." "What people? I thought you were alone." "I was. I'm not anymore." Sarah took a breath. I'll explain everything when I see you, but Em, I need you to understand something. I'm not running away. I'm not hiding. I'm choosing this. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing something that matters. Emily sighed. I want to see you. I want to see this place that's changed you so much. Then come, as soon as the roads are passable. Come and see for yourself. I will, but Sarah, yes. If you change your mind, if anything goes wrong, you call me. Promise me. I promise. Sarah hung up the phone and placed her hand on her belly. Your aunt thinks I'm crazy, she said softly. Maybe I am, but crazy might be exactly what we need right now. Day 30, Margaret brought visitors. Sarah opened the door to find the elderly woman standing on her porch with 3 other people, a middle-aged man with kind eyes. A woman about Sarah's age carrying a medical bag and a teenage boy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Sarah, this is Robert Harrison, his wife Claire, and their grandson Daniel. Robert stepped forward and took Sarah's hand in both of his. His grip was warm, strong, trembling slightly. I've waited 20 years to meet you, he said. Sarah blinked. I'm sorry. Your grandmother saved my life. My wife's life. Our 3 children. We were trapped in our house when the storm hit in '03. No heat, no food, no way out. Eleanor came for us. Walked 3 miles through the worst blizzard I've ever seen. Led us back here, fed us, kept us warm. Robert's eyes glistened. My youngest daughter was 4 months old. She would have died that night if not for Eleanor. Claire stepped forward. Our daughter is named Eleanor, after your grandmother. She's a nurse now, works at the hospital in Burlington. Sarah felt the world tilt slightly. I didn't know any of this. Your grandmother didn't talk about what she did, but we never forgot. Robert squeezed her hand. When Margaret told us you were here, that you were staying, that you were pregnant, we had to come. We had to tell you that you're not alone. You'll never be alone. The young woman with the medical bag stepped forward. I'm a midwife, trained in home births. If you'll have me, I'd like to help deliver your baby. Sarah stared at her. You'd do that? Ms. Mitchell, your grandmother saved my parents. She saved me. I wasn't born yet, but my mother was pregnant when the storm hit. I owe Eleanor Mitchell my existence. She smiled. Helping you bring your daughter into the world would be an honor. Sarah burst into tears. She couldn't help it. After weeks of isolation, of fear, of wondering if she could really do this alone, here were strangers offering to help. Strangers who remembered. Strangers who cared. Margaret put an arm around her shoulders. I told you, this community doesn't forget. Eleanor spent 40 years building something here. Not just the house, not just the canopy. She built us. She taught us how to take care of each other. Sarah wiped her eyes. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just let us help. Day 32. The second development company arrived. This time it wasn't Harrison Cole. It was a woman sharply dressed professional with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Ms. Mitchell, my name is Victoria Chen. I represent Pacific Northwest Holdings. Sarah stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Let me guess, you want to buy my land? We want to discuss possibilities. Our company specializes in ecotourism, sustainable development. We believe we could preserve the spirit of this property while... No. Victoria's smile tightened. You haven't heard our offer. I don't need to hear it. The answer is no. Ms. Mitchell, I understand you're attached to this place, but surely you can see that a pregnant woman living alone in the wilderness is not sustainable. Our offer would give you financial security. You could live anywhere. Give your child opportunities. My child will have opportunities, right here, in a place that matters. What opportunities? There's no school within 50 miles. No hospital. No. There's community. There's purpose. There's a legacy worth continuing. Sarah stepped back. This conversation is over. Victoria's mask slipped. Just for a moment. Sarah saw the frustration beneath. You're making a mistake. This property will be developed eventually, one way or another. Is that a threat? It's reality. The world doesn't stop for one woman's sentimentality. Sarah thought about her grandmother who had stood in this same doorway turning away developers for 40 years, who had never backed down, who had never sold out. My grandmother understood something you don't, Sarah said quietly. Some things are worth more than money. Some things are worth fighting for. And some legacies are worth any price to protect. She closed the door in Victoria's face. Day 35. Sarah woke in the middle of the night to the sound of breaking glass. She sat up, heart pounding, and listened. Footsteps outside the house, multiple sets. Hello, she called out. Who's there? No answer. The footsteps stopped. Sarah grabbed the fire poker and moved carefully to the window. In the moonlight, she could see figures moving near the canopy. 3 of them, carrying something. Hey, get away from there! The figures scattered into the darkness. Sarah's hands were shaking. She couldn't go out there. It was too dangerous. She was too vulnerable. But she couldn't just let them destroy what her grandmother had built. She found the old landline and dialed the only number she knew. Margaret answered on the 3rd ring. Sarah, what's wrong? Someone's here, at the house. They broke something. I saw them near the canopy. Stay inside. Lock everything. I'm calling Robert. Margaret, I'm scared. I know, honey. I know. But help is coming. Just hold on. Sarah waited by the fire with the poker in her hand, listening to every sound, jumping at every shadow. 20 minutes later, she heard vehicles. Headlights swept across the windows. A knock at the door. Sarah, it's Robert. You're safe now. She opened the door to find Robert Harrison with 4 other men all carrying flashlights, all looking grim. They're gone, Robert said, but they left a message. Sarah's stomach dropped. What message? Robert led her to the canopy. In the beam of his flashlight, she saw it spray paint across one of the ancient support posts. Sell or else. Sarah stared at the words until they blurred. Cole, she whispered. This is Cole. We don't know that for certain. Yes, we do. He said he'd be back. He said I was making a mistake. Sarah felt rage building in her chest, hot, clean, clarifying. He thinks he can scare me away. Can he? Sarah turned to face Robert. My grandmother built this house with her own hands. She saved 47 lives in it. She spent 40 years protecting it from men exactly like Harrison Cole. She touched the painted post, the violation of everything Eleanor had created. I'm not going anywhere, and neither is this house. Robert nodded slowly. Then we'll help you protect it. Day 38, Emily arrived. Sarah heard the car struggling up the newly cleared road and felt tears spring to her eyes before she even saw her sister's face. Emily got out of the car and stopped dead, staring at the house, at the canopy, at the pregnant woman standing on the porch. Oh my God, Emily breathed. Sarah. They met halfway. Emily wrapped her arms around Sarah carefully, gently mindful of the baby between them. You look different, Emily said. You look strong. I feel different. Emily pulled back and looked around. This place is incredible. The photos didn't do it justice. You've seen photos? Margaret sent them, along with a letter explaining everything. Emily's eyes were wet. Sarah, why didn't you tell me about grandmother, about the history, about all of it? I didn't know, not until I got here, not until I started listening. They went inside. Sarah made tea while Emily wandered through the rooms, touching walls, examining supplies, reading the labels on preserved jars. She really prepared for everything, Emily said. It's like she knew this was coming. I think she did. I think she knew I would need this place exactly when I would need it. Emily sat down at the heavy wooden table. I owe you an apology. For what? For thinking you were running away, for thinking this was a breakdown, for not understanding. She took Sarah's hand. This isn't running. This is coming home. Sarah felt something loosen in her chest, a tension she hadn't known she was carrying. Thank you. But Sarah, I'm worried about the developers. Margaret told me about the threats, about the vandalism. You can't fight these people alone. I'm not alone, that's what I've learned. I'm not alone, and neither was grandmother. She built a community here, people who remember, people who care. They're helping me. But what about when the baby comes? What about... Claire is a midwife. She's going to help deliver the baby here in this house, the same way grandmother helped deliver babies during the storm of '03. Emily stared at her. You're serious? Completely. Sarah, that's... Emily stopped herself, took a breath, started again. That's brave. That's incredibly brave. Or crazy. Maybe both. Emily smiled through tears. Mom would have a heart attack. Mom isn't here, and honestly, I don't care what she thinks anymore. I spent my whole life trying to make other people proud of me, trying to prove I deserved success, trying to earn approval. Sarah placed her hand on her belly. I'm done with that. This baby deserves a mother who knows who she is, who isn't afraid to stand for something. Emily squeezed her hand. Then I'm with you, whatever you need. Stay for a few days. Help me get ready for the birth. I'll stay as long as you need me. Day 40. Harrison Cole returned. Sarah was outside with Emily clearing snow from beneath the canopy when the black SUV appeared on the road. Go inside, Sarah said quietly. "Call Margaret." "I'm not leaving you alone with him." "Em, please, just call for help." Emily hesitated, then nodded and hurried toward the house. Cole stepped out of the SUV alone this time. No associates, no photographer, just him, his expensive coat, and a smile that made Sarah's skin crawl. "Ms. Mitchell, you've been busy?" "I thought I told you not to come back." "I'm a persistent man. It's what makes me successful." He walked closer, hands in his pockets, casual, unthreatening. "I heard about your little community meeting, the Harrisons, the Holloways, all the people your grandmother collected over the years." "They're not collected, they're family. They're useful, for now." Cole stopped a few feet away. "But they can't protect you forever. They can't stop what's coming." "What's coming?" "Progress, development, the future." He gestured at the surrounding forest. "This land is worth more than you can imagine. Not just for what it is, but for what it could become. I'm offering you a chance to be part of that." "I don't want to be part of anything you're building." Cole's smile faded. "Then you'll be an obstacle. And I remove obstacles, Ms. Mitchell. It's what I do." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm explaining reality. Your grandmother was stubborn too. Look where it got her." Sarah felt ice in her veins. "What does that mean?" "It means she died alone in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by nothing but trees and memories." "Is that what you want for yourself, for your child?" "My grandmother died with purpose, with meaning, with a legacy that matters." Sarah stepped closer to Cole, close enough to see the calculation in his eyes. "Can you say the same?" Cole's jaw tightened. "You don't know who you're dealing with." "Neither do you." They stared at each other for a long moment. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat, could feel her daughter kicking, could sense the house behind her like a solid presence at her back. "This isn't over," Cole said finally. "No, it isn't. But you should know something." Sarah smiled. "My grandmother left me more than this property. She left me documentation, legal protections, evidence of every dirty deal you've tried to make in these mountains, every politician you've bribed, every family you've destroyed." Cole's face went pale. "You're bluffing." "Am I check with your lawyers? Check with your friends in the state capitol, then decide if you really want to keep threatening a pregnant woman on protected conservation land." Cole stood frozen for a moment. Then without another word, he turned and walked back to his SUV. Sarah watched him drive away, her hands shaking, her heart racing. She had been bluffing. Mostly, she didn't have evidence of his crimes, but she had seen fear in his eyes. Real fear. That was something. That was a start. Day 42. Margaret arrived with news. "Cole is pulling back. His lawyers have been asking questions about the Conservation Trust, about the historical designation, about your grandmother's documentation." Sarah let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. "So the bluff worked." "For now, but Sarah, men like Cole don't give up. They regroup. They find another angle." Margaret sat down heavily. "You bought time, but you'll need to use it wisely." "What do you suggest?" "Your grandmother kept records. Real records. Not just the legal documents, journals, letters, photographs, documenting everything that happened in these mountains. Developers who tried to force people out, accidents that weren't accidents, fires that weren't coincidences." Sarah stared at her. She knew all of that. Eleanor knew everything. She watched. She waited. She documented. She always said the truth was the best weapon, but you had to know when to use it. "Where are these records?" Margaret was quiet for a moment. "There's a place, a hidden room below the house. Eleanor showed me once years ago. She said if anything ever happened to her, the truth would be there, waiting for whoever needed it." Sarah felt her heart begin to race. "A hidden room under the house." "The entrance is in the cellar, behind the root storage. There's a panel that moves if you know how to find it." Sarah stood up. "Show me." Day 43. The hidden room was everything Margaret had described and more. Behind a false wall in the cellar carved into the bedrock itself was a space about 10 feet by 10 feet. Fireproof, waterproof, lined with metal shelving, and filled with boxes. Sarah and Margaret worked through the night, sorting through decades of documentation. Journals going back to the 1970s. Photographs with names and dates on the back. Legal documents, newspaper clippings, recorded testimonies from families who had been pressured, threatened, forced from their land. She was building a case, Sarah whispered. All these years she was building a case. Against the developers. Against the corruption. Against everyone who tried to profit from destroying this community. Margaret held up a folder. "This is Harrison Cole's father. He tried the same thing in 1992. Your grandmother stopped him too. Sarah looked at the wealth of evidence surrounding her. Why didn't she ever use this? She was waiting. She always said timing was everything. That the right moment would come, and when it did, this information would change everything. Margaret met Sarah's eyes. I think you're the right moment, Sarah. Me? You have something Eleanor never had. You have the world's attention. A pregnant woman fighting to protect her grandmother's legacy against corporate developers. That's a story people will listen to. Sarah thought about her old career, about media coverage, public relations, the power of narrative. I could take this to the press. You could, but you'd need to be ready for what comes after. Cole won't go quietly. He'll fight back. He'll try to destroy you. Sarah placed her hand on her belly. Her daughter kicked strong and steady. He can try. Day 45. Sarah made the call. The reporter from the Burlington Free Press was named Jessica Townsend. She was young, ambitious, and very interested in a story about corporate greed, community resilience, and a pregnant woman protecting her grandmother's legacy. So let me make sure I understand, Jessica said, her voice crackling through the old landline. You have documentation going back 40 years proving a pattern of harassment and intimidation by development companies in the area. I have documentation, I have witnesses, I have names, dates, and details that have never been made public. And you're willing to go on record. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to protect this property and the community it serves. Jessica was quiet for a moment. This is big, really big. If what you're telling me is accurate, we're talking about criminal conspiracy, bribery, possibly worse. That's exactly what we're talking about. When can I come see you? As soon as the roads allow. I'll be there in 3 days. Sarah hung up the phone and let out a shaky breath. She had just started something she couldn't take back. Something that would change everything. But as she looked around the house at the walls her grandmother built, at the canopy visible through the window, at the legacy she was fighting to protect, she knew it was the right choice. Some battles were worth fighting. Some legacies were worth any price to defend. Day 46. Emily found Sarah crying in the hidden room. Hey, what's wrong? Sarah held up a photograph. It showed 2 women, one older, one younger, standing in front of the house. The canopy was being built behind them, posts rising toward the sky. That's grandmother, Sarah said. And that's my mother. Fino. Emily knelt beside her. I didn't know Mom ever came here. Neither did I, but look at the date on the back. Emily turned the photograph over. 1987. Mom would have been, 25? 25, the same age I was when I bought the condo. Sarah wiped her eyes. She's smiling, Em, really smiling. I don't think I've ever seen her look like that. What happened between them? Mom never talked about grandmother, never mentioned this place. I don't know, but there's a letter here. Sarah held up a folded page. From grandmother to Mom. It's dated 1989. What does it say? Sarah took a breath and read aloud. Dear Catherine, I understand why you feel you must leave. I understand why you've chosen the life you've chosen, but I want you to know that this house will always be here. The door will always be open. And if there ever comes a time when you need somewhere to run to, somewhere safe, somewhere that asks nothing of you except that you survive, this is that place. I love you. I will always love you. And I will wait for as long as it takes. Your mother, Eleanor. Emily was crying now, too. She waited. All those years she waited for Mom to come back. But Mom never did. No, she never did. They sat together in the hidden room, surrounded by decades of secrets, holding a photograph of a woman neither of them had ever really known. I'm going to call her, Sarah said finally. I'm going to tell her what I found. Sarah, you and Mom haven't spoken in 3 years, I know, but she needs to see this. She needs to know what she walked away from. Emily squeezed her hand. Whatever happens, I'm with you. I know. Day 47. Sarah dialed her mother's number for the first time in 3 years. Catherine Mitchell answered on the 6th ring. Hello. Mom, it's Sarah. Silence. Long enough that Sarah wondered if she'd been hung up on. Sarah. Her mother's voice was careful, guarded. This is unexpected. I'm at grandmother's house in Vermont. I've been here for almost 2 months. Why? Because I lost everything. My job, my home. David left me. I'm 7 months pregnant, and I had nowhere else to go. More silence. Sarah pressed on. I found things, Mom. Letters, photographs. I found a picture of you and grandmother from 1987. You were helping build the Canopy. That was a long time ago. Why did you leave? Why did you never talk about her? Why did you let me grow up not knowing this woman?" Catherine's voice hardened. "My relationship with my mother is none of your concern." "It is my concern. I'm living in her house. I'm protecting her legacy. I'm having a baby in the same room where she delivered 2 babies during the storm of '03. Sarah felt tears running down her face. "I deserve to know, Mom. I deserve to understand." For a long moment there was only breathing on the other end of the line. Then Catherine spoke, and her voice was different, smaller, older. "She chose that house over me." Sarah blinked. "What?" "When I was 26, I got engaged. I wanted to move to Boston, start a life, be normal. I asked her to come with me, to sell the property and live somewhere with electricity and running water and neighbors closer than 5 miles away. And she said no. She said she couldn't. Said the house needed her. Said people depended on it being there." Catherine's voice cracked. "She chose strangers over her own daughter. She chose that Canopy over me." Sarah closed her eyes. "Mom, I know what you're going to say. I know she saved lives. I know she was important to that community, but she was my mother, Sarah. I needed her too, and she couldn't be there for sure. She couldn't leave that house even for me. She wrote you a letter. I found it. She said the door was always open. She said she'd wait for you." "I know. She wrote me that letter every year for 30 years, every single year." Catherine was crying now. "And every year I told myself I'd go back, that I'd forgive her, that we'd work it out. And then she was gone and it was too late and I'll never get to tell her." "Tell her what?" "That I understand now. I understand why she couldn't leave. Some things are bigger than family. Some things are worth sacrificing for. I just wish—" Catherine's voice broke. "I wish I'd understood that while she was still alive." Sarah sat in the hidden room holding the phone, crying with a mother she hadn't spoken to in years. "Come here," Sarah said. "Come see the house. Come meet your granddaughter." "Sarah, I can't." "You can? The door is open, Mom. It's always been open, and I'll wait for as long as it takes." Day 48. The journalist arrived. Jessica Townsend was younger than Sarah expected. Late 20s, intense eyes, notebook already in hand as she stepped out of her car. "Ms. Mitchell, thank you for agreeing to this." "Thank you for coming." They walked through the house together. Sarah showed her the Canopy, explained its history, described the winter of 2003. She introduced her to Robert and Claire Harrison, to Margaret Holloway, to the network of families whose lives Eleanor Mitchell had touched. Then she took Jessica to the hidden room. The journalist's eyes widened as she saw the scope of what Eleanor had documented. "This is incredible. 40 years of evidence. Every dirty deal, every threat, every family that was pushed out." Sarah handed her a folder. "And this is Harrison Cole, his company, his methods, his victims." Jessica paged through the documents, her expression growing more shocked with each page. "If this is all accurate, it's accurate, every bit of it. This could bring him down. Not just legally, publicly, completely." "That's what I'm counting on." Jessica looked up at her. "You understand what you're starting. Once this story runs, there's no going back. Cole will come at you with everything he has." Sarah placed her hand on her belly. "He already has, and I'm still standing. Why risk everything for this place?" Sarah thought about the question. About everything she'd lost and everything she'd found. About the grandmother she'd never known and the legacy she was only beginning to understand. "Because some things matter more than safety," she said finally. "Some things are worth fighting for even when you might lose. My grandmother understood that. She spent her whole life building something that would outlast her. Something that would help people she'd never meet. Something that would still be standing long after she was gone." Sarah looked around the hidden room at the evidence of 40 years of vigilance, of preparation, of love. "I'm not going to let anyone destroy that. Not Cole, not any developer, not anyone." She met Jessica's eyes. "This house saved 47 lives. It's going to save more, and I'm going to make sure the world knows why it matters." Jessica closed her notebook and extended her hand. "Then let's tell them." Day 49. The story broke at 6 in the morning. Sarah woke to the sound of the landline ringing. She stumbled out of bed, her belly heavy, her back aching, and grabbed the receiver. "Sarah, it's Jessica. Have you seen it?" "Seen what I just woke up." "Go online, now, if you can." "There's no internet here." "Then I'll read it to you." Jessica's voice was trembling with excitement. "Front page Sarah, front page of the Burlington Free Press. Developer's dark history exposed pregnant woman fights to save historic shelter. and it's getting picked up everywhere. CNN is calling. The New York Times wants an interview. This is bigger than I ever imagined. Sarah sat down heavily, her hand on her belly. That fast. The documents you gave me, they're explosive. We're talking about decades of corruption, bribery, intimidation. 3 different investigations are being launched. Harrison Cole's lawyers have already issued a statement denying everything, but the evidence is too strong. He's finished, Sarah. You finished him. Sarah closed her eyes. She should feel triumphant. She should feel vindicated. Instead, she felt afraid. What happens now? Now the world wants to hear your story, and they're going to hear it whether you're ready or not. Day 50. The first news van arrived at noon. Sarah watched through the window as reporters set up cameras, pointed microphones trampled through snow that still covered the clearing. Margaret stood beside her, face grim. They found the road faster than I expected. Harrison Cole probably gave them directions. Sarah's voice was bitter. If he can't buy the land, he'll try to turn public opinion against me. Or he's hoping you'll crack under pressure, say something he can use against you. Emily appeared in the doorway. There's a woman outside. Says she's from Good Morning America. She's offering $50,000 for an exclusive interview. Sarah laughed. It came out harsh and broken. Tell her the property isn't for sale. Neither am I. Sarah, you need to make a statement. Something. The longer you stay silent, the more they'll speculate. I know. Sarah pressed her hands against her belly. The baby was restless today, kicking constantly as if sensing her mother's stress. I know. I just need a minute. Margaret touched her shoulder. You have as long as you need. Robert and the others are keeping the press back. They can't come onto the property without your permission. They'll find a way. They always do. The phone rang again. Emily answered, then held it out with wide eyes. It's your mother. Sarah took the phone with shaking hands. Mom, I'm watching the news. Catherine's voice was tight, controlled. They're showing the house. They're talking about your grandmother like they knew her. They're doing their jobs. They're vultures. They don't care about the truth. They care about the story. Then help me tell the real story. Come here. Stand with me. Silence on the line. Sarah could hear her mother breathing, could almost feel her wrestling with decades of complicated emotion. I can't. You can. The door is open, Mom. It's always... I know what I said. I know what Eleanor said, but I can't face that house. I can't face what I left behind. Catherine's voice cracked. I'm not as strong as you, Sarah. I never was. That's not true. It is. Your grandmother was strong. You're strong. I was the weak one who ran away and never came back. She paused. But maybe I can help another way? What do you mean, what? I know people. In Boston? Media people. People who can make sure your story gets told right. People who owe me favors. Sarah felt something shift in her chest. Her mother, who had abandoned this place, was offering to help protect it. You'd do that. I should have done it years ago. I should have done a lot of things. Catherine took a breath. I'm proud of you, Sarah. I don't say that enough. I've never said it enough, but I'm proud of what you're doing. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. Thank you, Mom. Now go face those cameras. Show them who Eleanor Mitchell's granddaughter really is. Day 51. Sarah gave her first interview at 9 in the morning. She stood on the porch beneath the canopy, surrounded by the people who had become her family. Robert Harrison stood on her left, Margaret Holloway on her right, Emily behind her hand on her shoulder. The cameras rolled. The microphones pointed at her like weapons. Miss Mitchell, how do you respond to Harrison Cole's accusations that you're nothing but a squatter on land that should be developed for public benefit? Sarah felt anger rise in her throat. She swallowed it down. This land has served the public for 40 years. My grandmother built this house to be a refuge for anyone who needed it. During the storm of 2003, 47 people sheltered here when the systems everyone trusted failed them. 2 babies were born under this canopy. Lives were saved because Eleanor Mitchell understood something that developers like Harrison Cole never will, that community matters more than profit. But surely the land could serve more people if it were developed responsibly. Developed responsibly. Sarah stepped forward. Let me tell you what developed responsibly means to Harrison Cole. It means forcing families from their homes, bribing local officials, threatening anyone who stands in his way. The documents we released aren't speculation. They're 40 years of evidence gathered by a woman who understood that the truth matters even when powerful people want to bury it. Another reporter pushed forward. Miss Mitchell, you're 8 months pregnant and living without electricity or running water. Some people would call that irresponsible. Some people would, but I call it choosing to raise my daughter in a place that stands for something. I call it honoring a legacy worth protecting. I call it refusing to let corporate greed destroy what generations built. Sarah placed her hand on her belly. This child will grow up knowing what her great-grandmother did. She'll grow up knowing that her mother stood her ground when standing her ground was hard. That's the inheritance I want to give her. The questions continued for an hour. Sarah answered every one. When the cameras finally stopped rolling, she walked back inside on legs that trembled with exhaustion. Emily was waiting with tea and a blanket. You were incredible. I was terrified. That's what made it incredible. You were terrified and you did it anyway. Sarah sank into a chair by the fire. Is it enough? Will it be enough to stop them? I don't know, but whatever happens next, the world knows the truth now. They can't unknow it. Day 53. Harrison Cole filed a lawsuit. The news came through Jessica, who called breathless and furious. Defamation. He's suing you for defamation, claiming the documents were forged, that you're conducting a malicious campaign to destroy his reputation. Sarah felt her blood run cold. Can he do that? He can try. His lawyers are good. They'll drag this out for years, try to bankrupt you with legal fees. I don't have money for lawyers. You won't need it. 3 different civil rights organizations have already offered to represent you pro bono. And Sarah, Jessica's voice softened. There's something else. The state attorney general is opening a formal investigation into Cole's business practices. This lawsuit is a desperation move. He's trying to intimidate you into backing down before the investigation finds something criminal. Sarah looked around the room at the walls her grandmother built, at the fire burning steady, at the people who had gathered to support her. Then I guess he picked the wrong person to intimidate. Day 55. The contractions started at 3 in the morning. Sarah woke gasping, her belly-tight pain radiating through her entire body. She tried to stand and nearly collapsed. Emily! Her voice came out as a scream. Emily! Her sister burst through the door, eyes wild with fear. What's happening? Is it the baby? Contractions, real ones, strong ones. Emily grabbed her hand. How far apart? I don't know, 10 minutes, maybe less. Okay, that's okay. We have time. I'm calling Claire. Sarah nodded, trying to breathe through the pain. The baby was early 2 weeks early, but not dangerously early. Claire had said anything after 37 weeks was safe, but safe and easy were not the same thing. Claire arrived within the hour, her medical bag in hand, her face calm and professional. Let's see what we're dealing with. She examined Sarah quickly, efficiently. You're dilated to 4 centimeters. This is real labor, but you have time. Could be hours yet. Hours. First babies take their time. Claire smiled. Your grandmother delivered 2 babies during the storm of '03. Both times she told me the same thing: the baby will come when the baby is ready. Our job is to be ready too. Sarah laughed despite the pain. That sounds like something she would say. She said a lot of wise things. I wrote them all down. Claire took her hand. You're going to be fine, Sarah. You and your daughter are going to be just fine. Day 55. 8 hours later. The labor was harder than Sarah had imagined. She had read books, watched videos, thought she understood what to expect. She had understood nothing. The pain was beyond anything she had experienced. Waves of it crashing through her body, leaving her gasping, screaming, begging for it to stop. Emily held her hand through every contraction. Margaret kept the fire burning. Claire monitored her progress with steady hands and encouraging words. You're doing beautifully. 8 centimeters, almost there. I can't do this. Sarah was crying now, her face soaked with sweat and tears. I can't. It's too much. You can. Emily's voice was fierce. You've survived worse than this. You survived losing everything. You survived the storm. You survived Cole. This is just pain, Sarah. Pain ends. Push through it. Claire's voice was calm. Your body knows what to do. Trust it. Sarah screamed as another contraction hit. Her vision blurred. The room spun. And then suddenly she heard her grandmother's voice. Clear as a bell. Quiet and strong. You're ready? Sarah opened her eyes. The room was the same. Emily, Margaret, Claire. The fire, the canopy visible through the window, the house that had sheltered so many. But something had shifted. Something inside her. She was ready. Push, Claire said. Push now. Sarah pushed. Day 55, Hour 12. Eleanor Grace Mitchell was born at 3:47 in the afternoon. She came into the world screaming, her tiny fists whilst waving her lungs, announcing her presence to anyone who would listen. Sarah held her daughter for the first time and felt everything she had ever been fall away. The job, the condo, David, the lawsuit, the reporters, Harrison Cole. None of it mattered. This mattered. This tiny, perfect person in her arms. "She's beautiful." Emily was crying, laughing both at once. "Sarah, she's so beautiful." "She has Eleanor's eyes." Margaret's voice was thick with emotion. "Your grandmother's eyes." "Fils." Sarah looked down at her daughter, at Eleanor, named for the woman who had made all of this possible. "Welcome home," she whispered. "Welcome to the place where you belong." Day 57. The world didn't stop for the birth of a baby. Sarah woke to find Margaret sitting by her bed, face grave. "What's wrong?" "Cole's lawsuit. The judge scheduled a hearing for next week. They're demanding you appear in person." Sarah looked down at Eleanor, sleeping peacefully against her chest. "I just gave birth 2 days ago." "I know. That's why they did it now. They're hoping you won't be able to travel. If you don't appear, they'll get a default judgment." "That's harassment." "That's Harrison Cole." Margaret's jaw tightened. "But Sarah, there's something else. Something I should have told you sooner." Sarah's heart began to pound. "What?" "The hidden room. The documents your grandmother collected. There's one folder I didn't show you. One folder Eleanor told me to keep separate." "Why?" "Because it's not about Cole. It's not about any developer." Margaret took a shaky breath. "It's about your father." Sarah felt the world tilt. "My father." "What about my father?" "He didn't leave because of the divorce, Sarah. He left because Eleanor made him leave." Day 58. The folder was thin, just a few pages. But those pages contained enough to shatter everything Sarah thought she knew about her family. Her father, James Mitchell, had been an accountant. But not just any accountant. He had worked for a development company in the 1990s. A company that had tried to buy Eleanor's land. When Eleanor refused to sell, James had been sent to pressure her, to find leverage, to make her cooperate. Instead, he had fallen in love with Eleanor's daughter. "He married Mom to get access to the property." Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "We don't know for certain, but Eleanor suspected. She found documents in his briefcase, plans for the land that included the house site. Does Mom know?" "I don't think so. Eleanor never told her. She was afraid it would destroy Catherine." Sarah thought about her mother, about the bitterness, the distance, the years of silence. But she made him leave. She confronted him, told him she knew what he was doing, gave him a choice: leave voluntarily or she'd tell Catherine everything. Margaret's voice was heavy. He left, moved to California, cut off all contact. And Mom blamed grandmother for driving him away. Yes? Sarah looked down at her daughter, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the generations of pain and secrets surrounding her. "I need to tell her. I need to tell Mom the truth." "Are you sure it will hurt her?" "She's been hurt for 30 years by a lie. At least this hurt will be honest." Day 59. Sarah made the call. "Mom, I need to tell you something. Something about Dad. Something about why he really left." The conversation lasted 2 hours. Catherine cried, screamed, denied, questioned, cried more. But at the end, when the storm of emotion had passed, she said something Sarah never expected. "I'm coming to Vermont." "What?" "I'm coming. Tonight. I need to see the house. I need to see Eleanor's things. I need to understand." "Mom, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to. For the first time in 30 years, I want to." Sarah hung up the phone with trembling hands. Emily found her standing by the window, watching the road. What happened? "Mom's coming." Emily's eyes widened. "Coming here? She hasn't been here since—" "I know, but I told her about Dad, about what grandmother knew." "Oh God, how did she take it?" Sarah turned to look at her sister. "I think she's finally ready to come home." Day 60. Catherine Mitchell arrived at dusk. Sarah watched from the porch as her mother's car, a sensible sedan carefully maintained, crept up the road that had once seemed impossible to navigate. Eleanor slept against Sarah's chest, bundled in blankets, unaware that her grandmother was approaching for the first time. The car stopped. The door opened. Catherine stood there for a long moment, looking at the house, at the canopy, at everything she had run from 30 years ago. Then she looked at Sarah, at the baby in her arms. "Is that her? Is that Eleanor?" Would you like to hold your granddaughter? Catherine walked forward on unsteady legs. Her hands shook as Sarah placed the baby in her arms. She has your eyes, Catherine whispered, and Eleanor's, my mother's. I know. Catherine looked up at the house again. I was wrong. All those years I was wrong. I thought she chose this place over me. But that's not what happened at all. What did happen? She was protecting me. From James, from his people, from what they would have done to her and to me if she hadn't been strong enough to stand her ground. Catherine's voice broke. She was always protecting me, and I blamed her for it. You didn't know? I should have known. I should have trusted her. Catherine closed her eye, tears streaming down her face. I wasted so many years being angry at the wrong person. Sarah put her arm around her mother's shoulders. You're here now. That's what matters. Can I see the house? Can I see what she built? Of course, it's your home too. It always was. Day 62. The hearing was in 2 days. Sarah sat at the wooden table surrounded by legal documents, her daughter sleeping in a bassinet nearby. The lawyers from the civil rights organization had sent everything they needed, but Sarah would still have to testify in person. You can't travel, Emily insisted. You gave birth 4 days ago. This is insane. I don't have a choice. If I don't appear, Cole wins. Let the lawyers handle it. Send testimony by video. That's not how it works. Sarah rubbed her tired eyes. I have to be there. I have to look the judge in the eye and tell the truth. Catherine spoke from the doorway. Then we'll all go with you. Sarah looked up. Mom? You're not facing this alone. We'll bring Eleanor. We'll bring Margaret Robert, everyone who knows the truth about what your grandmother built. Catherine's voice was stronger than Sarah had ever heard it. You want to tell the world what this place means, show them. Show them the community Eleanor created. Show them what they'd be destroying. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. You'd do that? You'd stand up in court. I should have stood up 30 years ago. I'm done running, Sarah. I'm done being afraid. Day 63. The night before the hearing, Sarah couldn't sleep. She walked through the house with Eleanor in her arms, touching walls, tracing her fingers along the seams her grandmother had joined, feeling the history embedded in every surface. Your great-grandmother built all of this, she whispered to her daughter. She built it with her own hands, her own vision, her own stubborn refusal to let the world tell her what was possible. Eleanor cooed softly, her tiny fingers wrapping around Sarah's thumb. And then people like Harrison Cole tried to take it away. They tried to turn something meaningful into something profitable. They thought they could intimidate her, buy her, destroy her. Sarah stopped in front of the window, looking out at the canopy in the moonlight. But they couldn't, because she understood something they never will. Some things are worth more than money. Some things are worth fighting for, even when you might lose. The baby made a small sound, almost like agreement. I'm scared, Sarah admitted. I'm scared of what happens tomorrow. I'm scared I'll fail. I'm scared I'll let her down, your great-grandmother. Everything she worked for. She took a deep breath. But I'm going to do it anyway, because that's what Eleanor would have done. That's what this family does. We show up. We fight. We protect what matters. Sarah pressed a kiss to her daughter's forehead. And tomorrow we're going to show them exactly what that looks like. Day 64. The hearing. The courtroom was packed. Sarah entered through the main doors, Eleanor in a carrier against her chest, her mother on one side, Emily on the other. Behind them came Robert and Claire Harrison, Margaret Holloway, and a dozen other members of the community Eleanor had built: teachers, farmers, nurses, parents, children who were now grown with children of their own. Harrison Cole sat at the plaintiff's table, surrounded by expensive lawyers, his face a mask of controlled fury. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked from Cole's team to Sarah's procession with raised eyebrows. Counsel, what is the meaning of this, Tumult? Sarah's lawyer stood. Your Honor, these are witnesses to the character and purpose of the property in question. They are here to testify to the historical significance of Eleanor Mitchell's house and the community it has served for 4 decades. This is a defamation hearing, not a historical review. With respect, Your Honor, the plaintiff's entire case rests on the claim that my client made false statements about his business practices. These witnesses can speak to the truth of those statements through direct personal experience. Cole's lawyer shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is a transparent attempt to turn this hearing into a media circus. I'll decide what this hearing is. The judge's voice was sharp. Counsel for the defendant, you may present your witnesses. Keep it relevant. Sarah watched as one by one the people her grandmother had helped took the stand. Robert Harrison described the night Eleanor walked through a blizzard to save his family. Claire talked about the babies born under the canopy, the lives saved, the community forged in crisis. Margaret presented documents Eleanor had collected over 40 years, evidence of threats. Bribes and intimidation by developers, including Cole's own company. Then it was Sarah's turn. She walked to the witness stand with her daughter against her chest, her heart pounding, her hand steady. "Ms. Mitchell," her lawyer began, "tell the court why you chose to remain at your grandmother's property instead of selling it." Sarah looked directly at Harrison Cole. "Because some things matter more than money. My grandmother understood that. She built a house that saved 47 lives. She created a community that looks after each other when the systems we're supposed to trust fail us. She documented 40 years of corruption by people like Harrison Cole because she knew that someday the truth would need to be told." She gestured at Eleanor, sleeping peacefully against her chest. "This is my daughter, named for my grandmother. She was born in the same house where Eleanor Mitchell delivered 2 babies during the worst winter in Vermont history. She will grow up knowing what her great-grandmother did. She will grow up knowing that courage matters, that truth matters, that standing your ground matters even when powerful people want you to back down." Sarah's voice grew stronger. "Mr. Cole wants to call what I said about him defamation, but the documents speak for themselves. The witnesses speak for themselves. The community my grandmother built speaks for itself. The only lie in this courtroom is the one he's been telling for decades, that profit matters more than people." The courtroom was silent. Cole's lawyer stood for cross-examination, but before he could speak, Cole himself grabbed his arm and pulled him down. They whispered furiously. Then Cole's lawyer stood again. "Your Honor, we need a recess." "On what grounds?" "My client wishes to reconsider his position." Sarah felt something shift in the room, a collective holding of breath. The judge nodded slowly. 30 minutes. Day 64, 1 hour later. Cole dropped the lawsuit. His lawyers announced it with barely concealed frustration of voluntary dismissal that fooled no one. The real story came out later through Jessica's sources. Cole had received word during the recess that the state attorney general was preparing criminal charges. His lawyers had advised him that continuing the defamation case would only provide more evidence for the prosecution. Sarah stood on the courthouse steps, surrounded by cameras, by community, by family. "Ms. Mitchell, what do you have to say about Harrison Cole dropping his lawsuit?" Sarah looked at her mother, at her sister, at the people who had traveled hours to stand beside her. "I say that the truth matters. I say that community matters. I say that one woman, my grandmother Eleanor Mitchell, proved that ordinary people can stand against powerful interests and win. Not because they have money or connections, because they have each other." She held up her daughter so the cameras could see her. "This is Eleanor Grace Mitchell, 4th generation to bear this name. And if she ever asks me what her great-grandmother stood for, I'll tell her this. She stood for the idea that some things are worth protecting, that some legacies are worth any price, and that when you build something with love, it becomes stronger than anything hate can destroy." The cameras flashed, the reporters shouted questions, and Sarah Mitchell, holding her daughter in her arms, finally allowed herself to smile. Day 66. Harrison Cole was arrested 2 days later. The charges were extensive: fraud, bribery, intimidation, conspiracy. His empire crumbled within weeks. Properties he had seized were returned to their rightful owners. Politicians who had protected him scrambled to distance themselves. Sarah watched the news coverage from the house, Eleanor sleeping in her arms, the fire burning steady. "It's over," Emily said. "It's really over." "This part is over." Sarah stroked her daughter's hair. "But the work isn't. Grandmother spent 40 years building something. I plan to spend the rest of my life continuing it." "What do you mean? This house saved 47 people in 2003. The next crisis might save more, but only if we're ready." Sarah looked around the room at the walls, the canopy, the legacies she had inherited. "I'm going to make sure we're ready." Day 68. Catherine Mitchell asked to stay. Sarah found her mother standing beneath the canopy at dawn, looking up at the structure Eleanor had built with her own hands. "I've been thinking," Catherine said without turning around, "about what I missed, about all the years I spent being angry instead of understanding." "Mom? I can't get those years back. I know that, but I can stop wasting the years I have left." Catherine finally turned to face her daughter. "If you'll have me, I'd like to stay. Help you with Eleanor, help you maintain this place." Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes. "You want to stay here after everything. This is where I should have been all along. I just didn't know it until now." Catherine's voice broke. "I'm sorry, Sarah, for everything, for the distance, for the silence, for not being there when you needed me. You're here now. I want to be here forever, however long that is. Catherine looked up at the canopy again. Your grandmother built this to hold people when they needed holding. I think it's time I let it hold me too. Sarah wrapped her arms around her mother, something she hadn't done in years. Welcome home, Mom. Day 70. Spring announced itself with a vengeance. The snow began to melt. The roads cleared. The forest remembered its colors. Sarah stood on the porch with Eleanor in her arms, watching the world transform around her. 3 months ago, she had arrived here broken. Jobless, homeless, abandoned. She had come to sell a house she barely remembered owned by a grandmother she had never understood. Now she understood everything. She understood why Eleanor had built the canopy, why she had prepared for disaster while hoping it would never come, why she had spent 40 years documenting corruption and protecting community. She understood why this house mattered, why it was worth more than any amount of money, why it needed to survey, and she understood her own purpose now. Clearer than she had ever understood anything. Your great-grandmother built this place, she whispered to her daughter, and someday you'll help me protect it. Someday you'll understand why it matters. Eleanor cooed softly, her fingers reaching toward the sunlight. Sarah smiled. The worst was over. The spring was here, and the house that had held so many was ready to hold again. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Day 75. The letter arrived without warning. Sarah was feeding Eleanor when Catherine brought in the mail, a rare occurrence now that the roads were clear and the world had started reaching toward them again. There's something here from Boston, Catherine said, her voice careful. It's from Morrison and Associates. Sarah's hands froze. Morrison and Associates. The firm that had destroyed her career. The firm where Richard Brennan had set her up to take the fall. Open it. Catherine slit the envelope and pulled out a single page. Her eyes scanned the contents. Then she sat down heavily. What is it? It's a settlement offer. They want to pay you $200,000 if you sign a non-disclosure agreement about what happened. Sarah stared at her mother. They want to buy my silence. Apparently, the publicity from the Cole case made some people nervous. Your name has been in the news. Questions are being asked about other cases of corporate retaliation. As Catherine handed her the letter, they're scared, Sarah. They're scared of what you might say. Sarah looked at the number. $200,000. Enough to rebuild everything she had lost in Boston. Enough to give Eleanor opportunities. Enough to make life easier. But it came with a price. If I sign this, I can never talk about what Richard did. I can never warn anyone else. That's what they're counting on. Sarah thought about the women who would come after her, the analysts who would trust the wrong person, the employees who would be sacrificed to protect someone else's mistakes. She thought about her grandmother who had documented 40 years of corruption because she believed the truth mattered more than convenience. No. Catherine's eyebrows rose. No. I'm not signing anything, and I'm not staying quiet. Sarah set the letter down. I think it's time I told my story, the whole story, not just about Cole, about Richard Brennan, about what really happens when companies need someone to blame. Sarah, if you do that, they'll come after you. Let them. I'm not the same person who left Boston broken and terrified. I'm Eleanor Mitchell's granddaughter, and Eleanor Mitchell never stayed quiet when speaking up could help someone. Day 78. Jessica Townsend answered on the first ring. Sarah, I've been hoping you'd call. There's been so much happening since Cole's arrest. I want to tell another story, a different story, about what happened to me in Boston. Jessica was quiet for a moment. The job you lost? The career that was stolen from me. By a man named Richard Brennan, who needed someone to take the fall for his mistake and chose me because I was convenient. Sarah, that's a serious accusation. I have documentation, emails I saved before they wiped my accounts, testimony from colleagues who saw what happened, and I have my own voice. Sarah took a breath. I'm tired of being silent, Jessica. I'm tired of watching powerful people destroy lives and walk away clean. If you go public with this, Morrison and Associates will fight back. They have resources you can't match. Then I'll match them with something else, with truth, with community, with all the people who've been hurt the same way I was hurt and were too afraid to speak up. Jessica was silent for a long moment. When do you want to do this? As soon as possible. I'll be there tomorrow. Day 80. The second article ran 3 days later. Sarah watched from the house as the story spread first. First local news, then national, then international. Her name was everywhere. Her face was on screens she couldn't see in cities she'd never visited. But it was Richard Brennan's name that dominated the headlines. Senior executive accused of systematic retaliation. Whistleblower reveals culture of fear at major consulting firm. Morrison and Associates faces federal investigation. Sarah's phone rang constantly. Journalists, lawyers, former colleagues, reaching out to share their own stories. Each call revealed another victim, another person who had been silenced, another career destroyed to protect someone higher up. You started something, Emily said, watching the news coverage with wide eyes. This is bigger than one company. This is changing how people think about corporate accountability. I didn't start anything. I just stopped being quiet. Sarah looked down at Eleanor sleeping in her arms. Grandmother understood that silence protects the wrong people. I finally understand it too. Day 83. Richard Brennan resigned. The news came through Jessica, who called breathless with excitement. It's official. He's stepping down immediately. The board forced him out after 3 more employees came forward with similar stories. Sarah sat down heavily. It's over. His career is over. Morrison is facing multiple lawsuits. There are calls for industry-wide reform. Jessica paused. You did this, Sarah. You and everyone who followed your lead. I didn't do it alone. No, but you went first. That's what matters. Sarah hung up the phone and walked outside where Catherine was working in the garden they had started beneath the canopy. Richard Brennan resigned. Catherine looked up, soil on her hands, tears forming in her eyes. Oh, Sarah? It's done. Everything I lost in Boston, it mattered. It led somewhere. Catherine stood and wrapped her arms around her daughter. Your grandmother would be so proud of you. I hope so. I hope she knows what we're doing here, what we're continuing. They stood together beneath the canopy that Eleanor had built, mother and daughter united after 30 years of distance. She knows, Catherine whispered. I believe she knows. Day 90. The first request came from a family in New Hampshire. Their house had burned down. Insurance was fighting their claim. They had 3 children under 10 and nowhere to go. We heard about your grandmother, the mother said, her voice cracking over the phone. We heard about what she did during the storm. We were wondering. Come, Sarah said before she could finish. Come right now. We have room. The family arrived 2 days later, exhausted, traumatized, carrying nothing but the clothes on their backs and a lifetime of grief. Sarah showed them to the room that had once sheltered her, now prepared for exactly this purpose. Stay as long as you need. There's no timeline. There's no expectation. This house was built to hold people when they need holding. The mother broke down sobbing. Why would you do this for strangers? Because my grandmother did it for 47 strangers in 2003, because that's what this place is for. Sarah took her hand. You're not strangers anymore. You're family. Day 95. Word spread. Within weeks, the house had become known again, not just as a historical site, not just as the place where the coal scandal began, but as something simpler and more profound. A refuge. People arrived in trickles at first. A woman fleeing domestic violence. An elderly man whose children had abandoned him. A teenage girl whose parents had kicked her out when she came out as gay. Sarah took them all in. The canopy that had sheltered 47 people during the storm of 2003 began sheltering new families, new stories, new lives rebuilt from wreckage. Margaret arrived one morning with supplies and tears in her eyes. Your grandmother always said this place would outlast her, that it would keep doing what it was built to do. She looked around at the activity, at the children playing, at the families healing, at the community growing. She was right. She was always right. I'm just continuing what she started. No, Sarah, you're making it bigger. You're making it matter for a new generation. Margaret took her hand. Eleanor would weep with joy if she could see this. Day 100. David called. Sarah nearly dropped the phone when she heard his voice. She hadn't spoken to him since the text message that ended everything, since he'd abandoned her pregnant and desperate. Sarah, it's David. I know who it is. I've been watching the news. Everything that's happened with you, with the house, with Cole and Brennan. His voice cracked. Sarah, I made a terrible mistake. Yes, you did. I want to see our daughter. I have rights. I'm her father. You're the man who sent a text message to the mother of your child saying the timing was wrong. You're the man who disappeared when I needed you most. Sarah's voice was steady, controlled. You lost any rights the day you walked out. That's not fair. Fair. Sarah laughed, harsh, humorless. You want to talk about fair? I was homeless and pregnant because the man I trusted abandoned me. I gave birth in the wilderness without you. I fought to protect a legacy you never understood while you were living your convenient life somewhere else. I've changed. I want to be part of her life. You had your chance. You chose not to take it. Sarah, please. No, Eleanor has a family. She has me, her grandmother Catherine, her Aunt Emily. She has a community of people who would die for her. She doesn't need a man who only showed up when staying away became inconvenient. You can't keep me from my own daughter. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. Watch me. She hung up the phone. Emily found her shaking in the kitchen. What happened? David called. He wants to see Eleanor. Oh God, what did you tell him? I told him no. I told him he lost his chance. Sarah pressed her hands against the counter, trying to steady herself. Was I wrong? Does she need a father? She has everything she needs right here. And if David wanted to be part of her life, he should have thought about that before he sent a text message ending your relationship. He said he'll fight, that he has rights. Emily's jaw tightened. Let him try. We have documentation of his abandonment. We have the text message. We have months of zero contact while you struggled alone. She took Sarah's hands. You're not alone anymore. Whatever he tries, we'll face it together. Day 105. David filed for custody. The news came through the same legal team that had helped Sarah fight Cole. They gathered in the living room documents spread across the heavy wooden table, faces grim. He's claiming parental alienation, the lawyer explained, saying you've deliberately kept him from his daughter. That's a lie. He abandoned us. He never tried to make contact until he saw me on the news. I know, and we can prove that. But custody battles are unpredictable, Sarah. Judges sometimes favor biological fathers, especially when they claim they've reformed. Catherine spoke up. What can we do? Document everything. Gather testimony from everyone who witnessed what Sarah went through alone. Build a case that shows exactly what kind of father David chose to be when it mattered. Sarah looked down at Eleanor sleeping peacefully in her bassinet, unaware that her future was being fought over by strangers in suits. I won't let him take her. I won't let him use her to make himself feel better about what he did. Then we fight, and we win. Day 112. The first hearing was brutal. Sarah sat in the courtroom. Eleanor in her arms watching David on the other side of the aisle. He looked different, polished, contrite, rehearsed. His lawyers had clearly coached him on how to appear sympathetic. Your Honor, my client has made mistakes. He admits that freely. But he's Eleanor's biological father, and he has a constitutional right to be part of her life. Sarah's lawyer stood. Your Honor, David Chen abandoned Ms. Mitchell when she was 5 months pregnant. He ended their relationship via text message. He made no attempt to contact her for months while she struggled alone, homeless and desperate. His sudden interest in fatherhood coincidentally began after Ms. Mitchell became a national news story. That's irrelevant, David's lawyer shot back. The question is, what's best for the child now, not what happened in the past. What happened in the past is directly relevant to what kind of parent Mr. Chen will be in the future. A man who abandons his pregnant partner when she needs him most is not suddenly transformed by media attention. The judge held up her hand. I've heard enough arguments. I want to hear from the parties themselves. She looked at David. Mr. Chen, in your own words, tell me why you believe you should have custody of your daughter. David stood, adjusting his tie, his face arranged in an expression of earnest regret. Your Honor, I made a terrible mistake. I was scared and overwhelmed, and I handled it badly. But I've had time to reflect, to grow to understand what I threw away. He glanced at Sarah. I love my daughter. I want to be part of her life. I want to teach her things, watch her grow, be there for the moments that matter. The judge nodded slowly. Ms. Mitchell. Sarah stood Eleanor still in her arms. Your Honor, David says he wants to be there for the moments that matter. But the moments that mattered already happened. They happened when I was sleeping on my sister's couch, pregnant and terrified. They happened when I was giving birth alone in the wilderness with no one but strangers to help me. They happened during every night I stayed awake worrying about how I was going to feed my daughter and keep a roof over her head. Her voice grew stronger. David wasn't there for any of those moments. He chose not to be. And now that the hard work is done, now that I've built a life and a community and a future for our daughter, he wants to share in what he never helped create. She looked at David directly. That's not fatherhood. That's opportunism. The courtroom was silent. The judge looked between them for a long moment. I'm going to take this under advisement. We'll reconvene in 30 days for a final decision. She gathered her papers. But I'll say this much, parenthood isn't a right you claim. when it's convenient. It's a responsibility you accept when it's hard. I'll be considering carefully who has demonstrated that responsibility in this case. Day 120, the community rallied. Word of the custody battle had spread through the network of families Sarah had helped. Within days, testimonials began flooding in letters to the judge, affidavits from witnesses, documentation of everything Sarah had done and everything David had failed to do. Robert Harrison wrote about the night his family was saved by Eleanor Mitchell and how Sarah was continuing that legacy. Margaret Holloway described Sarah's courage during the winter alone and pregnant in a house she barely knew. Claire, the midwife, testified about the birth, about Sarah's strength, her determination, her love for the daughter she was bringing into the world. "You're not fighting this alone," Emily told her. "You were never fighting alone." Sarah looked at the stack of letters, at the outpouring of support from people she'd helped and people who'd helped her. I finally know. Day 130, the judge ruled in Sarah's favor. She denied David's custody claim, completely citing abandonment, lack of contact during critical periods, and what she called troubling timing of his sudden interest in fatherhood. This court finds that David Chen forfeited any claim to parental rights when he abandoned Ms. Mitchell and their unborn child. His subsequent silence during the pregnancy, birth, and first months of Eleanor's life demonstrates a pattern of indifference inconsistent with the responsibilities of parenthood. Sarah wept as the decision was read. Not from relief, though relief was part of it. She wept because she had fought and won, because her daughter was safe, because the system that had failed her in Boston had finally worked in her favor. David's face went white. He turned to look at her across the courtroom, not with anger, but with something sadder. Defeat. Recognition of what he had lost and could never reclaim. Sarah met his eyes and felt nothing. No triumph, no vindication, just peace. It was over. Day 140. Summer arrived in Vermont like a revelation. The forest exploded with green, the clearing around the house filled with wildflowers. The canopy, which had seemed so stark and strange when Sarah first arrived, now looked like what it had always been, a monument to foresight, to care, to the belief that preparation was a form of love. Sarah stood beneath it with Eleanor in her arms, watching butterflies dance through the warm air. 6 months ago I came here to sell this place, she said softly. I was going to convert your great-grandmother's legacy into money and walk away. Eleanor cooed, reaching for a butterfly that floated too close. I didn't understand then. I didn't understand what this place was, what it meant, what it could become. Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead. But I understand now, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure it keeps doing what it was built to do. Catherine appeared at her side. The family from New Hampshire is leaving today. The insurance finally came through. That's wonderful. They wanted to pay you something, for the room, the food, the months of help. I hope you told them no. I told them to pay it forward, to help someone else when they're able. Catherine smiled. Your grandmother would have said the same thing. She would have. That's exactly what she would have said. Day 150. The documentary crew arrived. Jessica had arranged it a feature film about Eleanor Mitchell's legacy, about the house that had saved lives, about the granddaughter who had protected it against impossible odds. Sarah was nervous at first. Cameras had been her enemy not long ago, weapons wielded by people who wanted to destroy what she was building. But these cameras were different. These cameras wanted to tell the truth. Tell me about your grandmother, huh? The director said. Sarah thought for a long moment. She was a woman who understood something most people never learn. That security isn't something you get from institutions or systems or other people. Security is something you build yourself with your own hands in your own time. And once you build it, you share it. You open your doors. You let people in who need what you've created. What do you want people to take away from this story? That ordinary people can do extraordinary things. That one woman working alone for 40 years can build something that saves lives. That communities matter more than corporations. That preparation is a form of love. Sarah looked at the canopy rising above them. And that some things are worth protecting no matter what it costs. Day 160, Emily announced she was staying. Sarah found her sister in the garden, hands dirty with soil, face flushed with sun and satisfaction. I've been thinking, Emily said without preamble, about my life. About what I've been doing versus what I could be doing. What do you mean? I mean I've been working a job I hate in a city that doesn't need me for a company that would replace me tomorrow without blinking. And I've been doing it because that's what you're supposed to do. That's what success looks like. Emily stood up, wiping her hands on her jeans. But success doesn't look like that, does it? Success looks like this, like building something that matters, like being part of a community that cares about each other, like watching your niece grow up surrounded by people who would do anything for her. Sarah felt tears forming. Em, I'm staying. I'm selling my apartment in Providence, and I'm staying here. If you'll have me. If I'll have you. This is your home too. It always was. They embraced in the garden, surrounded by vegetables they'd planted together beneath the canopy that had sheltered so many. Grandmother would be thrilled, Sarah said. More family. More hands. More hearts. I think she'd say something practical, like, good, now there's someone to help with the firewood. They laughed together, real laughter, free and unguarded. Day 175. A letter arrived from Richard Brennan. Sarah almost threw it away unopened, but something stopped her curiosity perhaps, or the need for closure. Dear Ms. Mitchell, I won't insult you with apologies you don't want or explanations you won't believe. I'll only say this, you were right, about everything, about what I did, about what it cost you, about who I really was. I destroyed my career trying to cover up a mistake, and I destroyed your career in the process. I have to live with that. You've moved on to do remarkable things. I've spent months watching the news coverage of what you've built, what you've protected, what you've become, and I've realized something. You were always going to be extraordinary. I just didn't see it until it was too late. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I see you now. I see what you are, and I'm sorry I was ever stupid enough to think I could break someone like you, Richard Brennan. Sarah read the letter twice. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in the hidden room with all the other documents her grandmother had collected. Not because she forgave him, because she wanted to remember. Day 190. The anniversary approached. 1 year since Sarah had arrived at the house broken and desperate. 1 year since she had first stood beneath the canopy and wondered why anyone would build such a strange structure. She had learned so much since then. About her grandmother. About her mother. About herself. She had learned that strength wasn't the absence of fear, it was the decision to act despite fear. She had learned that community wasn't something you joined, it was something you built. She had learned that legacy wasn't about what you left behind, it was about what you enabled others to continue. We should have a celebration, Catherine suggested. Invite everyone who helped us this year, show them what we've built together. Grandmother wouldn't have wanted a celebration. Maybe not, but you're not your grandmother Sarah. You're allowed to celebrate. You're allowed to be proud of what you've accomplished. Sarah considered this. Okay, but not a celebration of me, a celebration of the community, of everyone who made this possible. That sounds perfect. Day 200. The gathering was larger than Sarah expected. They came from across the county, families Eleanor had saved in 2003, families Sarah had helped in the past year, journalists and lawyers and activists who had been part of the fight against coal. They filled the clearing around the house. They spilled out beneath the canopy. They brought food and music and stories. Sarah stood on the porch, her Eleanor in her arms watching them all. Look at this, she whispered to her daughter. Look at what your great-grandmother built. Look at what we're continuing. Margaret approached with a small box. We wanted to give you something, all of us, to mark the anniversary. Inside the box was a simple silver bracelet engraved with 2 words, hold fast. It was Eleanor's motto, Margaret explained. What she said when things got hard. What she whispered to people who were afraid. Hold fast. It means don't let go. Keep gripping. Endure. Sarah put the bracelet on with trembling hands. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep this place alive. Keep the legacy going. I will. I promise I will. Day 210. Sarah sat down to write her own journal. Her grandmother had kept records for 40 years, observations, preparations, testimonials. Sarah decided it was time to add her own voice to the record. To whoever reads this after I'm gone, she wrote, this house was built by my grandmother, Eleanor Mitchell, in the 1970s. She built it to survive. She built it to shelter. She built it to hold people when holding was what they needed most. In 2003, during the worst winter in 50 years, this house saved 47 lives. My grandmother organized everything. Food, shelter, warmth, hope. She asked for nothing in return. She wanted nothing in return. She only wanted the house to keep doing what she built it to do. I came here in despair, not understanding. I came to sell, to extract value, to walk away. But the house had other plans. It taught me. It held me. It showed me what my grandmother knew, that some things are worth protecting at any cost. I don't know what will happen to this place after I'm gone. I don't know who will come next, what they will face, what they will need. But I know this if you're reading these words, you're already part of the story. You're already part of the legacy. Hold fast. Don't let go. And keep the house standing. Keep it ready. Keep it open. Because someday someone will come who needs it more than they know. And this house will be here for them. Just like it was here for me, Sarah Mitchell, Eleanor's granddaughter, Eleanor's mother. Day 220. Summer began to fade into autumn. The leaves started to turn. The air grew crisp, the forest prepared for another winter, another season of testing of endurance of proof that what Eleanor built could withstand whatever came. Sarah stood beneath the canopy with her family, her mother, her sister, her daughter, the community that had become her home. Another winter coming, Margaret observed. Another chance to prove what this place can do. We're ready, Sarah said. We're always ready. That's what Eleanor taught us. What are you going to teach little Eleanor? Sarah looked down at her daughter now, 7 months old, bright-eyed and curious about everything around her. I'm going to teach her what this place means. I'm going to teach her that family isn't just blood, it's choice. It's commitment. It's showing up when showing up is hard. She lifted Eleanor higher, showing her the canopy, the house, the forest beyond. I'm going to teach her that her great-grandmother built something that matters, and I'm going to teach her that someday it will be her turn to protect it. And if she doesn't want to, if she chooses a different life, then I'll love her anyway. That's what Eleanor would have wanted. That's what I want. Sarah smiled. The house will find whoever it needs. It always does. Day 230. A letter arrived from Jessica Townsend. The documentary had won an award. It was being screened at festivals across the country. People were talking about Eleanor Mitchell's legacy in ways they hadn't talked about anything in years. You've started something, Jessica wrote. Not just for this house, for communities everywhere. People are building their own canopies now, not literal ones, but metaphorical ones. Places of refuge, networks of care, the Eleanor Mitchell model, they're calling it. Sarah read the letter aloud to her family. The Eleanor Mitchell model, Catherine repeated. Mom would have hated that. She never wanted recognition. She never wanted it for herself, but she wanted the idea to spread. She wanted people to understand that they didn't have to wait for institutions to save them. They could save each other. And now they are. Now they are. Day 240. The first real snow of the new winter arrived. Sarah watched it fall through the narrow windows, the same windows her grandmother had designed to let in light while keeping out cold. The same windows that had witnessed so much history. Eleanor was asleep in her bassinet. Catherine was reading by the fire. Emily was organizing supplies in the cellar. The house was warm. The house was ready. The house was doing what it had always done. Sarah walked to the door and opened it, letting the cold air rush in for just a moment. She looked up at the canopy white with new snow, solid and patient as it had been for 50 years. Thank you, she said softly, for everything, for saving me, for teaching me, for giving me a purpose I never knew I needed. The canopy didn't answer. It didn't need to. It simply held, as it always had, as it always would. Day 250. 1 year to the day since Sarah had arrived at the house with nothing but desperation and a fading hope that something would save her. She stood in the same spot where she had stood that first day at the edge of the clearing, looking at the house, trying to understand what she was seeing. But now she understood. She understood why her grandmother had built the canopy, why she had stored supplies, why she had documented corruption and organized community and spent her entire life preparing for disasters she hoped would never come. She understood that preparation was love, that community was survival, that some things were worth any price to protect. She understood that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Eleanor stirred in her arms, waking to the winter light. Look, Sarah said, turning her daughter toward the house. Look at what you come from. Look at what you'll continue. Eleanor reached toward the canopy with tiny fingers. Catherine appeared at Sarah's side. Ready to go inside. It's getting cold. In a minute. Sarah took a deep breath of mountain air. I just want to remember this moment, this feeling. What feeling? Sarah smiled. Home. This is what home feels like. Not a place you own. A place that owns you. A place that claims you for something bigger than yourself. They stood together in the snow, 3 generations of Mitchell women bound by blood and choice and legacy. Then they walked inside, closing the door against the cold, returning to the warmth that Eleanor had built and Sarah would maintain and little Eleanor would someday inherit. The fire burned steady. The walls held strong. The canopy protected everything beneath it. and the house that had held so many continued to hold patient, ready, eternal waiting for whoever would need it next, because that was what Eleanor Mitchell had built it to do, and that was what her granddaughter would ensure it always did. Some people inherit money, some inherit property, but the luckiest among us inherit purpose, a reason to stand a cause worth fighting for, a legacy that asks only that we be worthy of it. Sarah Mitchell had come to Vermont with nothing but despair. She left that despair beneath the canopy, buried under the snow of her first winter, transformed into something stronger by the fire her grandmother's hands had learned to tend. She found her grandmother's story. She found her mother's truth. She found her own strength. And in finding these things, she found what Eleanor had always known. The house was never just shelter. It was a promise. A promise that someone would always be ready. A promise that someone would always hold fast. A promise that love built into walls and canopy and community would outlast anything the world could throw against it. Sarah kept that promise, and her daughter would keep it after her, and her daughter's daughter after that. Forever.